But they picked their battles here, and they said, Sam has struggled in the red zone in the past. And we are going to say, if you're going to beat us, you're going to do it with your arm. And he's been hot and cold in that area for a total in 2024. So it was one of those bets that I really liked because I think that it was driven by successes and failures that we've seen throughout the season. I think there's a lot of data points that point to this being a great decision. And, of course, the film itself. And what we saw from Sam Darnold was there were times when he was just a little bit off in the red zone. And that made all the difference in the world for this team. It allowed them to get an upper hand. Even with making this bet to defend the red zone the way that they did, I don't know if they thought they were going to win 31-9. But to even limit them to 1 or 2 less touchdowns than you would normally expect the Minnesota Vikings to convert in the red zone, that's all the margin that you need if you're the Detroit Lions. So that, to me, is the stat that told the story. Again, it's to the Lions defense, but it's also a little bit more of the Vikings. And it worries me a little bit. Is this a little more of a blueprint here, and is it just going to come down to Sam's got to execute better in the red zone when they get into the playoffs?
No, this was the Aaron Glenn legacy game, right? I know there was talk about at least Alex Anzalone getting healthy, and he was mixing up, Glenn was mixing up coverages, man and zone, and even combo down there in the red zone and sending blitzes when it was the right time to send them. And I think the key to it all is the Lions' mentality on defense. It is an attacking defense as much as they run man, as much as Glenn likes to blitz. But I think for this team, they really are bend but don't break. They have to be, right? Because they just, again, like you mentioned, 9 points, stellar, A-plus job. Even if the Lions, if any day the Lions give up 24 or less, I think they're going to feel really good about it because they know what this offense can do. They've proven over and over there's almost no way to stop it, especially if you don't get pressure, consistent pressure on Jared Goff. And he made mistakes early in this game. There's no way to stop this offense. I think at home, I don't know how they score any less than 30 points on any given night. So I think the goals here between bend but don't break, apply pressure to a quarterback who still hasn't made a ton of starts in his career, and I know he's been great this year, and you mentioned it in the red zone, make him beat you. Make him beat you because I think the biggest thing with Kevin O'Connell is that he's arguably the best coach in football right now at creating open windows for his quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Well, when those windows are tighter, like you mentioned, and you're daring them to throw the football and down in the red zone, he just not a whole lot of space to get it there. You saw Darnold. He was on his back foot. He was missing throws. I think for the Vikings on offense, I don't know that they could have done anything more schematically to help him. I just think he was missing throws.
Yes.
He was feeling the heat, everything was fast, and he was just missing.
And it's not that he's not capable of hitting the throws, but again, it's the bet that you take if you're the Lions defense, and you just go, we're going to play him as best as we possibly can, and perhaps this is not his night. And it wasn't his night against the Lions, but I wonder if you force him into more of those situations, do the Vikings look a little bit more vulnerable than they have really throughout the whole regular season, because they barely did throughout that time. So Darnold was my most disappointing.
Same.
So sort of the stat that told the story goes into the Darnold conversation. My most impressive, I'm going to go with cornerback Amik Robertson for the Detroit Lions. He didn't have the best grade in terms of like coverage grade. I believe his coverage grade was right around 61.0 because he did give up a handful of catches, but had 2 forced incompletions, had a dropped interception that he was able to get his hands on, could have come away with that one. Covered Justin Jefferson for a good part of the night, and of course the quote afterwards where he gets the game ball from Dan Campbell and he says, hey, they tried to bury me, but can't bury what comes from the dirt. So, I mean, that's just a badass quote. You can tell the locker room absolutely loved it, and the vibes are high for the Lions. I'm really excited about this team. I want to make sure that I say this, and it's not any sort of slight to the Vikings, who I also have loved watching throughout the course of this season. But with all the injuries that the Detroit Lions have faced, I enjoy the fact as a fan of the game that they're going into the postseason with the vibes very high. If they would have lost to the Vikings, I'm not going to lie, I'd be a little bit worried about this team, given the fact that they're going to have to be on the road the whole time. Can they have another defensive performance like that again? And if they lost, they probably wouldn't have had as good of a defensive performance. I'd be a lot more worried about the Detroit Lions if they would not have won this game than I am with the Vikings. I think the Vikings are going to be just fine.
I think there was 3 levels of this. There's one, if they would have lost, I'd have been extremely worried. I would have been worried that they would have lost in the first round if they had to go to LA or Tampa.
I agree.
Had they won this game in the shootout that we thought it was going to be and their defense still struggled, I would have been like, okay, they earned the 1, but I still don't know if their defense is good enough. I still might lean toward Philly. Their defense playing like this in this game with Anzalone coming back, Amik Robertson, like you mentioned. Terrion Arnold, we'll see where his injury goes if he can be back in a couple weeks. He had his highest graded game of the season. That's a pretty good time for it, right?
Yep.
I think all of those factors and the way their defense played in this game just might reaffirm them as the NFC favorite, especially with the 1 seed and a week off and all the games at home. And you figure in their first round matchup, they're going to play either LA, Tampa, or Minnesota again, who they've already beaten twice. So I think.
Did you see Dan Campbell said that after the game with the handshake with O'Connell?
Oh, he said, what does it see in 2 weeks?
He said see in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Well, the Vikings got a tough task. They already lost once at LA.
I know. No, LA's no pushover, man.
They're dangerous, and I think a veteran quarterback like Stafford is a huge problem for Brian Flores' defense. He eats up young quarterbacks, but veteran guys we've seen they can at least diagose things a little bit better.
We
know
really
Stafford
do
can
have
do that with the best
excellent matchups in the NFC, and obviously we'll bounce around all of this. You get a rematch of Week 1 with the Eagles and the Packers, except hopefully Jordan Love's out there the entire time for this one, although I know he sustained a little bit of an injury this past week. But you're hoping everything's good to go. You hope Jalen Hurts is good to go, right? I think this could be an awesome matchup with these two teams this week. Bucks, with the Commanders, another rematch of Week 1, but that's the fun one. Jaden has grown so much, but Todd Bowles has shown that he really knows how to get after these quarterbacks that have this dual threat ability and frustrate them more than other coaches normally do. So that's going to be fantastic to watch. And then, of course, the Vikings and the Rams, one of the very few teams that the Vikings lost to this season. It's tough to go out in LA and just straight up, it's tough to beat Sean McVay. He's a phenomenal head football coach. Anything else in this game before we move on?
I want to throw out my most impressive. I'll tell you what, when everyone criticized the Lions for taking a running back and a linebacker in the first round of the draft last year, Dan Campbell shutting that up real quick. At first, Jahmyr Gibbs, 28 touches, 170 total yards, 4 touchdowns. He's got 70 scrimmage yards at least in every single game this season. I mean, and then Jack Campbell at the top of that highest graded list, and I think he benefited a lot from Alex Anzalone coming back just to be able to play more free and know that other guy next to him can get the job done. I talked about the struggles of the Lions linebackers lately. Campbell, 7 tackles, 3 pressures as a pass rusher, allowed 5 catches, but only for 18 yards, 82 coverage grade. I think these two guys, with Montgomery hurt and with the Lions really needing help in the middle of their defense, I think Gibbs and Campbell might be the X factors in this whole thing. And I've told you about Jack Campbell the last couple weeks. If you get the Jack Campbell that we saw in the second Packer game and in this game, this defense completely changes because he's got a boatload of potential. He can do everything on a field as a middle linebacker. He just has to do it more consistently. I think he's maybe my number 1 player to watch in this entire process, Jack Campbell, because if they can get the middle of the field straight, obviously the safeties are great behind him, and we know the D-line is going to be what it is until maybe they get Hutch back in the Super Bowl. But I think that's been the biggest problem for me is at linebacker. If Campbell and Anzalone play the way that they did last night, then I think they'll go to the Super Bowl.
Saints and Buccaneers, the next game that I want to hit on here, another game that has this implications of the playoffs, of the Buccaneers winning this contest, winning their division, and now hosting against the Washington Commanders next week. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded Tampa Bay Buccaneer players in this game. Running back Bucky Irving at the top of the list with a 78.9. Wide receiver Mike Evans, the 1,000-yard man himself, with a 76.7. Guard Cody Mock with a 75.2. Linebacker Levante David a 73.8. Wide receiver Jalen McMillan a 71.6. And quarterback Baker Mayfield with a 94.8. I don't know. Do you have Levante David? I don't think I have Levante David in any of mine, but I just want to shout him out for that diving forced incompletion, that diving tipped pass
on the last
that
drive,
he had
right?
On the last drive. And I just want to shout him out there before we get to the top 5s for the Saints, because I watched that play and I go, even though the Bucs defense was struggling, they were letting him come down the field, I thought to myself, how many pointless Week 18 games has Levante David played in that stadium since he got drafted?
Way too many.
Too many.
I've been to a couple of them, honestly.
I have too. I have too. Back in my Peter Report days when I was covering them.
You've been to all of them, yeah.
It did not matter. And you just had to think to yourself, David's going to give it all he's got, because he's not one of those players who has had a lot of team success throughout his career. Obviously, the last 5 years have been very different for him, but most of his career, it's been pointless games. And you could tell that he was still, even at his age, going all out to make sure that he's not giving anything less than 100% in all of those. On New Orleans side of things, shout out to Kool-Aid McKinstry, their cornerback at the top of this list with a 78.8. He was tasked with guarding Mike Evans on a handful of those plays, and I thought that he played it well. I'm excited to see Kool-Aid McKinstry coming up next year in a full-time role for them now that Marshawn Lattimore is with Washington. Nafai Sewell, the linebacker, 78.1. Guard Cesar Ruiz with a 76.8. Chase Young with a 74.4. And then DeMario Davis, another ageless linebacker, at a 73.4. Quarterback Spencer Rattler in this one with a 50.9. What was your stat that told the story here?
Look, we were sitting there watching this game together, and the first half was, especially for you, quite frustrating. I'd say 16-6 Saints at halftime, and the Bucs just their defense couldn't get off the field. That's really what it was. I think they only had the ball for 10 minutes in the first half, but they found it in the second half. The Bucs 7.2 yards per play in the second half. The Saints just 2.2. 8 explosive plays for Tampa, 1 for the Saints. EPA per play, a massive difference between them. And obviously the passing grade, the two quarterbacks in the second half, 84.6 for Mayfield, 28 for Spencer Rattler. And honestly, we'll get more into Mayfield because this was actually the highest graded game of his career. Despite the less, I think he's had better, more gaudy statistics, like baseline statistics when it comes to other games. I think about the Packer game last year, right? The baseline numbers won't jump out at you. 221, 2 touchdowns, an interception. But what he did for this team in the biggest moments. In past weeks, we've talked about Liam Cohen and the scheme and the offensive line getting better and Mike Evans' threat percentage and all that. This was actually for the Bucs, the Baker Mayfield legacy game. He just willed them to a win.
Yes.
And you know what started all of it? And in the best Baker Mayfield fashion, the third play of the second half, 3rd and 6, scrambles up the middle, goes out to his right, runs for a first down, gets hit kind of sort of as he's sliding. He slid a little late, and then he steps over Will Harris and starts a whole big fight. And the Bucs before that point had just
He tried to Alvin Iverson him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And he just, the Bucs up to that point had looked absolutely flat.
Yeah.
They looked in the first half like they were going to lose this game. Mm-hmm. And Baker just decided to just light a match and piss everybody off on both sides. And you could see it on both sides. The Bucs were just a little bit angrier after that point. The Saints committed 2 personal fouls later in that drive, and the Bucs eventually scored. Baker Mayfield in this game was... He just willed them to a victory.
I agree.
He was the leader between the scrambles and breaking tackles and starting fights, and just he was the spark plug to what for the first half was just an awful performance all the way around. We have to give him, and he's got to be the most impressive. I just 94.8, 96.3 grade under pressure in this game. I mean, back-to-back throws. You got a corner route to Jalen McMillan on 4th down, which he gets penalized 15 yards for. Then the referees don't know what down and distance or should we be goal to go or 1st and 10. It takes them 5 minutes to figure that out. Then they get a holding penalty. Then it's 1st and 20, and then he throws another dart to McMillan in the corner of the end zone. I mean, just everything about this was Baker Mayfield willing this team to a win. This wasn't scheme. This wasn't X's and O's. This wasn't, even the Saints giving this game away. This was, for me, I would argue, maybe the playoff game last year sticks out too against the Eagles.
Right.
Because they just teed off on the Eagles. I think to me this was like the most Baker Mayfield game I've ever seen. And he was just spectacular. He willed them to a win in this game.
I agree with you. And the more that I thought about this and this Baker Mayfield performance, because I think that he was fantastic, specifically in how he ran the football, right? I mean, there were a couple of really nuts throws, but 88.9 rushing grade and 68 rushing yards for Baker Mayfield in this game. To me, it felt like the first half of this game felt like the Broncos game in Week 3, where they're coming off of a win against the Detroit Lions. They're 2-0. They're feeling great. And then they just lay an absolute egg at home to the Denver Broncos. And you go, is this just what we're going to have to live with? You know, is this just going to be the story of the Buccaneers? And they have been up and down, but this game to me was very similar to that Broncos game. Nothing was working, but then there was no spark. There was no turnaround. Just nothing worked for the whole game. This game started that way. And then Mayfield went, nope, I'm not letting that happen again. And I think that Mayfield has been great about having that mentality throughout his NFL career, but I don't think he has, whether it's been himself or even the supporting cast around him, had what he has needed to have to actually ignite that spark. And what we saw yesterday, I think that he did. You know, whether it was willing Mike Evans to his 1,000 yards or making sure that they control their own destiny and not have to rely on Carolina to beat Atlanta to get into the playoffs or whatever it is, he was just a different cat. And he was able to ignite that spark yesterday. So I felt like there were parallels between those two games. And earlier in the season, they lost. And here this week, they did not. And that just shows the growth that this team has had.
And I think even you just have, like, even in the grades, the top 5 that we showed, they're just you have the right mix of young and old, right? We look at all the guys we've mentioned, Mike Evans and Levante David, and then, you still have, say, like Tristan Wirfs, even though he's been, this is his 5th year only, but he's kind of a veteran of the group. And then you have young guys like Jalen McMillan and Bucky Irving and Cody Mauch stepping up, right? But Baker Mayfield right now is the glue that just holds it all together. And he doesn't care who's around him or who's on the other side. He's just going to fight his ass off.
Yeah.
And I think it sounds funny because he made great throws and big-time runs and all that stuff, but I think the play I'm going to remember is the step over and starting that big brawl and all his offensive linemen getting in there and doing that, because it's just that's what jump-started it, and that's just the leader that he is. And it's hard. I mean, you're replacing Tom Brady. Think about this. This is 2 years he's had like this, and he's replacing Tom Brady after he won a Super Bowl in Tampa and did everything he did, and he's just come in there with the same attitude he had in Cleveland of just, listen, I don't care. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to play as hard as I can, and we're going to win ball games. And it's been so much fun to watch. Look, are they probably not a Super Bowl contender? Probably not. Mm-hmm. But, man, are they fun to watch with him leading the way.
Don't call them not Super Bowl contenders. Don't you do that. I don't agree with that.
Get your defense healthy.
So that's, the most disappointing has to still be the defense. Bucs defense in the fourth quarter, specifically 55.8 coverage grade. I just don't know how much it's going to be better this year. It seems like the Bucs have to score 25 plus or they're not going to win football games. They just don't really have the horses to win the race, if you will, in the secondary, especially without Antoine Winfield Jr. in there. Jordan Whitehead, I hope he's okay long term. Got injured in a car accident, so he's going to be out for the rest of the season on a non-football injury list. Mike Edwards was sort of all over the place. I mean, they're just running out of bodies. If they get Antoine Winfield Jr. back, great. Obviously, they very much need him. But even on the outside of the corner, Zion McCollum's been good, but Jamel Dean's been very up and down himself. And so they just haven't really played cohesively. Maybe they'll hit the ground running in the playoffs, but it's hard to expect that from them. So that's my most disappointing. My most impressive, though, is Todd Bowles. And it's weird to say that with the defense playing as bad as it is, knowing that that's Todd Bowles' side of the ball. But for him to actually continue to run plays when they could have just taken a knee, gone into victory formation when they got the ball back, to actually get Mike Evans his 1,000 yards. I mean, you saw the scene during the game on the sidelines, and then the clips and the photos in the locker room of everybody freaking out and just, rallying around. Like, that is what you need to be that underdog going into the playoffs, right? I mean, like, even against Washington, Washington's coming into town, Tampa's the team hosting, but Jaden's the flashier story, like Jaden and what he is doing and his rookie year there. And I guess I would say it's pretty even, but the Bucs have to have that underdog chip on your shoulder mentality in order to advance deep into these playoffs. And Todd Bowles doing what he did to basically say, I'm going to give this team the opportunity to have that kind of fun, to create those kind of vibes, I think is going to be a X factor for this team heading into the playoffs. So shout out to him.
It was the best moment of the day yesterday.
Yeah.
Out of everything we saw, easily that last play and Evans getting over, because even the fans at Ray J, they were waiting for that as much as they were they were waiting for that equally as much as they were for a division title, which they knew was coming. They were actually on pins and needles and honestly we were sitting there too, because we know what it means and how good Mike Evans is. So no, just a spectacular job there. And the last thing for me, the most disappointing, just the Saints. We talk about Baker Mayfield taking off running. They just need pass rushers. I mean, we've known this all season. No sacks or knockdowns of Mayfield, and a 46.5 pass rush grade as a team. They're another team. I'm going to talk about it on several teams today. The Saints, they need help in the trenches, and this time they've started the process with their offensive line, drafting Fuaga. They moved Penning over to the other side, but now it's their defensive line, and they really need to overhaul it this offseason. They got to find some sort of pass rush.
Next game. What are we moving on to next? Let's stay in the NFC South. Let's do Panthers and Falcons next. Panthers win this game. Obviously, this had a lot of NFC South implications as well. If the Falcons won this game, they would have needed the Buccaneers to lose in order to make the playoffs, but they were still in it when the ball got kicked off. However, Carolina won this one in a shootout, 44-38. Top 5 graded Carolina Panthers in this game. Offensive tackle Taylor Moton at the very top of the list with an 81.7.
Look at it. It's so awesome.
Look
at it.
Well, just the offensive line.
We finally made this happen.
I didn't realize it was all offensive line.
I didn't rig this up or anything. I asked for it a few weeks ago, I think with the Falcons, and we got 4. Now we finally got an entire offensive line as the
This
top
is
five.
absolutely perfect because Moton, I mentioned 81.7 at the top. Center Cade Mays, an 81.4 at number 2. Offensive tackle Ike Ekwonu with a 73.0 at number 3. Guard Chandler Zavala with a 72.9 at number 4. And then guard Damian Lewis with a 72.5. And the icing on the cake here is that Bryce Young was the highest graded player for the Carolina Panthers as the QB here with an 89.3. On Atlanta's side of things, not an all-offensive line, but you like the names that are on this list. Chris Lynch with a 92.3, guard Matthew Bergeron a 91.8, wide receiver Drake London an 89.9, running back Bijan Robinson an 89.0, offensive tackle Jake Matthews with an 83.2, and then Michael Penix Jr. a 95.6 PFF grade. You love to see that. That goes right into my stat that told the story here, and that was just what a game this was between two young quarterbacks that could be phenomenal to watch as the years come. The big-time throws, we had 10 big-time throws in this game. 7 of them were for Michael Penix Jr. 3 of them were for Bryce Young. No interceptions, no turnover-worthy plays. I mean, it was just, as the meme says, cinema between these two quarterbacks. And it goes to overtime, so we get a little bit of extra ball as well. You get the Steph Curry fadeaway touchdown to win the game with Bryce Young in the end zone. I mean, it was a beautiful display of football between two quarterbacks who we weren't sure that Bryce Young was going to get to this point, right? When he gets benched at the beginning of the year, you go, oh no. We thought the bad confidence that we saw from his rookie year was going to be washed clean. It's all new coaching staff, new structure. He's going to be good to go this year. And those first 2 games for Bryce were bad. He gets replaced by Andy Dalton. We don't even know if Bryce Young's going to be the starting quarterback again this year or in Carolina at all whatsoever. He gets put back in the lineup. Looks a lot more confident. As weeks go on, he looks even more confident. This was fantastic for Carolina. And I know that Carolina dropped a few spots in the draft. In my opinion, this was the most important thing that happened for them. To end the season the way that they did, scoring as many points as they did, and for Bryce Young to look as good as he did, that is the most important part of all of this for Carolina, not just a couple of spots in the draft. So that was my stat that told the story. What a special game this was. I absolutely love to see it. What about you?
Just incredible. And I'll stick with the 2 quarterbacks for a second. First of all, Michael Penix, just a spectacular display. You talk about arm talent and just a willingness to make throws downfield. I know this is real bittersweet for the Falcons. It really stings a lot because they were the favorite coming into the year to win this division, and everything happened. Kirk Cousins and the contract and all that. But for Michael Penix to look as good as he's looked and make the throws he's made when we've seen him this year, at least you go into the offseason knowing full well who your quarterback is. At the very least, you know what? There's a lot of teams in this league that can't say that. Even in just 3 starts with Penix, we can say, okay, we're building this thing around Michael Penix, and we know what we have to surround him with. Bryce Young, and for as great as Penix was in the grade, that was one of the 6 best grades by any quarterback all season.
I believe it, yeah.
We saw 3 of the 6 best grades by any quarterback all season this week, and we'll get into the other ones. But Penix was spectacular. But Bryce Young, look, at least Penix gets to do it with Drake London and Darnell Mooney and Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. Bryce Young put up these numbers with Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker and Adam Thielen. Chuba Hubbard was out for this game, suffered the injury. Jatavian Sanders is just getting in a rhythm. I mean, you look at this. 84.7 passing grade, 3 more big-time throws. Since week 9, he's got an 87.1 overall grade. And he's second in the league in big-time throws, I believe, behind Joe Burrow. He didn't just play decent football, fun football down the stretch. He played elite football.
He looks totally different.
For the first year and a half that we saw him play, I just never saw him play with this much conviction.
No.
He just all of a sudden he came back and he's just in command. And I think that's the biggest thing is what worried us the first 2 weeks before they put Andy Dalton in for him was just like, this guy has zero confidence.
Zero.
And now he has – I mean, we're turning around doing the Steph Curry, Lamar Jackson turnaround, throwing touchdowns now, just looking away from – I mean, Bryce Young now has established himself again, I guess, as their franchise quarterback. And I know they didn't win a ton of games this year, and their defense has a long, long way to go. They gave up the most points ever in a regular season. But we can fix the defense, and we can find another receiver. We can find these things. We've got that offensive line and this quarterback playing the way he's playing. We can build. And I think that's the biggest thing. Dave Canales this year in his first season has to consider this a success despite all of their other flaws because Bryce Young played the way he did down the stretch. For me, it was the single most fun story from any non-playoff team that I watched the second half of the season.
Yeah.
Every week I actually had fun watching the Carolina Panthers down the stretch. And
yep.
On the other side of it with the Falcons, both of these teams need plenty to get into Super Bowl type contention, right? The stat that told the story for me was, we saw that offensive line with the top 5 for the Panthers. Falcons, right back to it, no sacks. No sacks at all.
You give credit to Carolina.
Absolutely. No, it
line.
is a good offensive line. They've been better than they've been given credit for all year. But the Falcons, 15% pressure rate as a team.
Bad.
Can't have it. 12.8% pass rush win rate as a team. Not just one guy, the whole team.
12?
12.8.
It's bad.
And for the season, still, we talked about it all year, and they got it together recently, and the coverage let them down, but now it just all caved in. And they finished this year in the bottom 3 pass rush grade, pressure rate, pass rush win rate. Maybe there's a couple equal, but there is no more obvious need in the entire NFL than the Falcons needing pass rush help. There isn't any more. I mean, this is just straight up, they cannot beat good teams, even decent teams and good quarterbacks with this pass rush. Just can't. If they take anything but a pass rusher in the first round of this draft, it would be mind-boggling to me. They just can't. They are incapable of rushing the passer.
I'll go back to a positive for Atlanta. My most impressive was Drake London. 18 targets, 10 catches, 187 yards, 2 touchdowns. Him and Penix are going to be unbelievable this year. Unbelievable.
Penix is a guy, and he did this a lot with Odunze at Washington. When he is a guy like that, especially a guy with size, he just gives him a chance.
100%.
It's
100%.
It's so awesome.
And especially a guy with the catch radius and the strength of catching that Drake London has, because Michael Penix has a howitzer of an arm, and he likes to throw the fastball the most. So if he has a wide receiver, like you mentioned with Odunze, but when he has a wide receiver that he knows, I can uncork this and it's not going to bounce off this guy's hands. Like, that's a ton of faith that he has in him, and I think that Drake London and Michael Penix is going to be one of the best quarterback wide receiver connections in the NFL next year. And then my most disappointing is just not going to Michael Penix Jr. sooner, because the Falcons found themselves too many games behind. Exactly one game behind. Well, I guess it would be 2 now, but they were right there with the Buccaneers. They would have gone to Penix sooner. Maybe this is a little different. Now, I know if you go to Penix sooner, Kirk Cousins absolutely torched the Buccaneers, so it's a little bit of two sides of the coin.
It's the controversial part of the contract and the decision-making process.
No, I get it. It's just if you are a Falcons fan, with you being so close to this, could have gone to Michael Penix a little bit sooner. I think that you would have had a better chance of winning a division, simply because you watch all 7 of those big-time throws for Penix. It is not even close, night and day different arm strength. I mean, some of those big-time throws that Michael Penix had, I went, I don't know if you should have attempted that. But the miles per hour on the ball is so damn fast, it works. And he gets to the sideline in between the 2 defenders or over the shoulder of the defender exactly when he needs to. And I go, all right, you're playing with fire, but you're also holding the flamethrower yourself. So it was a fun day watching Penix. And if you're a Falcons fan, disappointing end of the season, but you got to love what you got moving forward.
Yeah, they just got to fix up. They got to fix up this defense, and I think they do need one more weapon on the outside for I think Darnell Mooney had a really good year. I think one more weapon would help them a lot, but their defense, they have to figure out a pass rush, anything at all. If they have an average pass rush this year, they probably win 11 or 12 games.
That would have also helped. Yeah, Chiefs and Broncos. Broncos win this game, not even close. Chiefs didn't play any of their starters basically. Denver wins this game 38-0. Top 5 graded players for the Denver Broncos. Quinn Miners at the very top of the list with an 87.3. Edge rusher Nick Bonito an 87.3 as well. Cortland Sutton with an 83.7. Wide receiver Devon Bailey with a 73.3. And then guard Ben Powers a 68.3. Bo Nix in this game, the highest graded player. at a 90.3. On KC side of things, linebacker Blake Lynch with an 87.3. Safety Jaden Hicks an 80.8. Wide receiver Nico Remigio with a 77.3. Don't see Remigio's name up there very often. Cornerback Joshua Williams with a 71.3, and then offensive tackle Wanya Morris with a 67.8. Carson Wentz a 44.3 PFF grade. I figure we'll probably be pretty quick with this one. Stat told the story, or even just a bigger overall thought that you would have.
Just a kudos to Sean Payton here. The Broncos in this game, 0.886 EPA per pass, the fifth best by any team in any game this season, and 75.9% of their passes generated a positive EPA in this game, highest by any team in any game this season. What he's done with Bo Nix, and it's funny because I won't tell you I was super high on Nix at draft time. I had him as QB5 out of those 6 guys. But I think we all knew full well Bo Nix and Sean Payton just made sense. Right?
Yes.
It just made sense. And when Denver actually got to take him, I was like, okay, this is worth watching. This is we're going to see what happens here and how quickly Sean Payton can really turn this around. And they've done it. I mean, they have a legitimate threat in the passing game because they have a legitimate threat at quarterback. And I'll tell you what, you leave no doubt against a team playing backups here. Bo Nix, I mean, 26 of 29, 321, 4 touchdowns, 3 big-time throws. Running the ball, too, 7 carries, 47 yards. We've seen his mobility be an asset, I think, going all the way back to the preseason. And you see there, and I think the biggest thing that Sean Payton probably liked about him, and we've talked about this all year with the lack of turnover-worthy plays, Nix doesn't beat himself. And I think that's why they might be, obviously they won't be favored. They will be a heavy underdog in Buffalo in the first round. But the fact that Nix doesn't beat himself is huge. That's the first thing I think in NFL games especially that you have to do to win games is don't beat yourself. That 1.9% turnover-worthy play rate, third lowest by a rookie in a regular season in PFF history since 2006. You look like you wanted to take a guess at the 2. Do you want to take a guess at the 2?
No, I actually don't know who. Since 2006?
Yeah. Third lowest turnover-worthy play rate as a rookie.
I have no idea. I don't want to have bad air, but
Russell Wilson.
God, I wanted to guess Russell Wilson, but I was like, did he have a ton of turnovers as a rookie?
Russell Wilson and Jaden Daniels.
Oh, you did that on purpose.
Well, of course I did.
Okay.
I mean, that's where we're at. Any other year, Bo Nix would win Rookie of the Year, but Jaden. I mean, he's got to win it. He's just been
probably
unreal.
He's probably going to win it.
But
Bo's deservingly second.
And nobody, I don't think anybody looks, and he's only gotten better as the season's gone on. Since week 8, 84.8 or 84.6 overall grade. I mean, that's big time top 10. He's played like a top 10 quarterback down the stretch here, and he showed it again in this game. And he's going to give them at least a puncher's chance in Buffalo next week.
My side that told the story is the Broncos pass rush. I talked about this in the previous show with Carmen. That was the area that could truly just wreck this game. I thought, okay, well, hey, it's still the Chiefs coaching staff. It's still the Chiefs roster that Brett Veach has built, and it's still good players. But I said to myself, if this Broncos pass rush tees off on what is a unreliable Chiefs offensive line, even with their starters in there, then I don't think this game's going to be even close. And the Broncos have had the second highest pass rush grade as a team over the last month. So they've been feeling themselves. And, well, they got after the quarterback in this game. 22 pressures, 72.0 pass rush win percentage as a team.
That'll do it.
72.0. It's nuts. You're winning on basically 3/4 of the time.
Poor Carson Wentz, man.
He was pressured on 13 of his 25 dropbacks.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? So to me, it was just that the Broncos pass rush was playing so good that this was never going to be a contest. And then my most impressive is just Bo Nix and how well he played. You mentioned that the 3 big-time throws in this game were a lot of fun to watch. One of them was a sideline shot between cover 2, between the corner and the safety. Another one was a seam throw a little too far away from where the single high safety could get to it, right over the linebacker or slot defender that was covering that. I can't remember, but it was a beautiful throw right there. And it's like, man, those are the throws that you want to see from Nix going into the postseason. That's the confidence that Sean Payton's going to, sit down with him at some point this week and be like, this is the quarterback we know you could be. And you know you could be it too because you attempted and completed these throws. So The Broncos are going to need Nix to step out of his comfort zone a little bit more than we have seen even this year. Now, he's got to still take care of the ball well, but if they're going to go on this playoff journey, they're going to need a little bit more in the big-time throw category from him than we have seen on a week-to-week basis this year, but we certainly saw it this week. I don't have a most disappointing in this one. It's hard to have one. I like the Chiefs, we're bad, but they played their backups against the Broncos starter, so I don't really have it.
Yeah, the only thing I want to point out with the Chiefs, too, is just Najee Johnson. He's played a lot more than at corner than he's expected to this year. A couple of years ago, they really drafted him as more of a special teams ace, and he's been pressed into action at corner and gave up 5 catches and 107 yards in this game. But the Chiefs have opened the practice window for Jalen Watson, which I think is absolutely massive. I think we've seen teams kind of pick on Johnson all year. And again, it's a tough spot to be put in, especially in this secondary. For this Chiefs defense, the starting unit now to get Jalen Watson back, man, oh man. I mean, Steve Spagnuolo in the playoffs with a fully loaded defense. Good luck to you, especially in Kansas City.
Let's go back to your Jets for this next one. The Miami Dolphins traveled to New York and lost against the Jets 32-20. I know a lot of Jets fans weren't happy with that because it affected their draft position, but hey, you know what?
It made sense that we would win this game. It really made sense. I actually knew coming in, I was like, when I saw Tua probably wasn't, I was like, we're going to win this game, aren't we? Yeah. We probably are.
Yeah, and you did. The Jets' top 5 graded players in this one, wide receiver Devontae Adams, this is his last game as a Jet. Well, he went out on top. An 84.2 overall grade. Safety Ashton Davis with a 79.0. Linebacker Quincy Williams a 76.3. Guard Elijah Vera Tucker with a 75.8. And then running back Breece Hall with a 74.1. Aaron Rodgers in this game, if this is his last game as a Jet, if this is his last game in the NFL, at least it was a fun one. It was one of the better games that we have seen from him this year, and then that obviously includes the last 2 years. He had a 77.4. On Miami's side of things, center Aaron Brewer with a 77.6, wide receiver Malik Washington a 74.7, wide receiver River Craycraft with a 74.1, safety Javon Holland a 74.0, cornerback Cater Kohu a 70.9, Tyler Huntley not as good this time around with the backup quarterback Magic 52.8. What do you want to talk about here? Stat that told the story, or where do you want to go?
First of all, Malik Washington, I'm keeping an eye on him. That was one of my favorite players in this past year's draft. I just love that guy.
And I love this landing spot, too, because I felt like Miami was going to give him the opportunity to be pretty explosive.
Absolutely. But, this year, this Dolphins season, outside of maybe the injuries and Tua getting ravaged with all the injuries and all that, this year for the Dolphins went exactly like I thought it would. I'm pretty sure I picked them to go 8-9, and I told you, they're just not good enough in the trenches. They're just not. Their offensive line in this game, 56.6 overall, 21st in the league overall for the season, 30th since Week 10, and I just think we've seen it over and over. They're okay when Teron Armstead's in the lineup. They're passable when he's not.
Right.
It's just not good enough, and they need to figure out this offensive, especially if Tua is going to continue to be their quarterback. They have to get significantly better on the offensive line. And even the defensive line in this game, 61 overall, 45.8 run defense. And, aside from Calais Campbell, who is still their highest graded player on defense this season at 38 years old, and Zach Sealer, who's done a nice job on the inside, Chop Robinson, through injuries and ineffectiveness elsewhere, became their best edge player already. And he was solid and came on as the season went on. And their edge players as a unit, 24th overall and 26th in pass rush grade. They're just not good enough in the trenches. They didn't really replace Robert Hunt. They didn't really replace Christian Wilkins with a long-term answer. They got Calais Campbell, but okay, so he's going to play next year at 38, 39 years old, or if he's going to be there at all. This team, they have the skill. They have guys in the secondary who did kind of underperform this year, but they're another one. They're not good enough in the trenches. I didn't think they were good enough in the trenches before the season. They certainly aren't now. It's not like he got better throughout the season, so they've got to get more physical, and we've seen it late in the year when they have to go to New York, to Buffalo, to Green Bay, to wherever to play these cold weather games. It just shuts down because they're not physical enough.
Yeah, and it just, I don't know. A part of me feels like the Dolphins have sort of deprioritized their offensive line, thinking that they could scheme around it. That if we have the speed that we want, and obviously when Tua's firing on all cylinders in this McDaniel offense, he's getting the ball out very quickly. So they're hoping that they could sort of mitigate the offensive line. And obviously you got Tyreek Hill, you've got Jalen Waddle, you're bringing Jonnu Smith, you got guys like Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. There's a lot of speed on this team. You're drafting Malik Washington. You brought in Odell Beckham Jr. at one point, right? they've clearly invested a lot at different times in a lot of these skill position players. And the offensive line, you have Teron Armstead, but he's been really beat up, as you mentioned. They do draft Patrick Paul in the second round, so I want to make sure that I'm not totally ignoring that. They sign Aaron Brewer, but Liam Eichenberg's still around, kind of like moving from spot to spot, not really playing well.
Well, and Paul doesn't get to play unless Armstead gets hurt.
Right, and you had Robert Hunt. Robert Hunt leaves. You don't really replace him. Again, it felt like the Dolphins were trying. It felt like they were playing with the line of like, how little do we have to actually invest in the offensive line here and still be good? And when you play that game, it's a dangerous game. And I think they learned the hard way this year that you can't – offensive line is seen as a premium position. You can't really go too far down below like a premium position. Need to make sure that this is top tier with how they've sort of invested their money over the last couple of years in a lot of skill position players. Jalen Ramsey on the other side of the ball is sort of a skill position player that you go to there. And I understand that they've gone through some injuries. You're losing Christian Wilkins. Jalen Phillips is out for the year again. Bradley Chubb doesn't come back. Like I get all that stuff, but to me it was just it was a year that I felt the Dolphins tried to prioritize things, or I should say didn't prioritize the offensive line the way that we typically see teams do when it comes to roster building in this league, and it really bit them this year. Now the vibes seem all over the place. You got Jalen Ramsey posting sort of cryptic messages on Instagram. You got Tyreek Hill, ain't nothing cryptic about it. I think he's played his last down in Miami. It's just a matter of, okay, well, what happens from here now? They already announced that Mike McDaniel's coming back. Chris Greer is still going to be the general manager, but you got Javon Holland now entering free agency, sort of coming off that down year. What happens with him? What do you do with Bradley Chubb, who wasn't able to play this season? How much do you really lean on Jalen Phillips going into next year? There's a lot of question marks now in Miami. All of a sudden, this team went from borderline playoff team to things might get off the rails pretty quickly here in Miami.
In a very expensive roster.
Yes.
Trading Hill is not going to be easy. To make themselves some breathing room of cap space, they may have to cut Teron Armstead and or Bradley Chubb. And if you cut Armstead, you're at ground zero for your offensive line. They have the most expensive secondary in football. I don't know that they can afford to keep Javon Holland at safety. I mean,
right.
These are primetime, big foundational pieces of your team that I don't know if they're going to be there next year. And you've just paid Tua his big money. It's a very in-between situation the Dolphins are in right now, because I think they may have thought they were ahead of where they were, after making the wild card round the last couple of years. But you're right. The big difference between, because Mike McDaniel's always kind of put in that group with Kyle Shanahan because that's where he came from and all that. But the big difference is that Kyle Shanahan always had Trent Williams in that offensive line rolling. And this Dolphins team, they just don't have that. That's where it starts for me. And it's hard for me to look at a team with a bad offensive line and go, okay, you're a Super Bowl contender. That's why I can't believe, even if they're in the playoffs, teams like the Texans and the Steelers or, the Bears or the Giants, it's still a problem. There's so many teams, Seattle, where it's a huge issue out there is pass protection. If you can't pass protect, I just can't look at you that seriously on that level. Maybe you'll make the playoffs like, say, Houston has, but I just can't do it, and the Dolphins are in that group.
Most impressive, most disappointing for you?
You know what? I'll just give Aaron Rodgers his credit here. He was good in this game. If it is his last game in the NFL, like you mentioned, 274 yards, 4 touchdowns.
He didn't seem like he wants to be done.
Probably not.
And I think there's too many teams that need a quarterback who, if he does I don't know if he'll sign for the vet minimum, but it feels like he wants to keep playing football.
And this is the weird part. So his numbers for this season were darn near identical to what they were in 2022 when he was roughly the 10th best quarterback in football. And this year, I think in our grading, he ended up 14th. Mm-hmm. He played decent football on paper, but you can tell it's limited too. I mean, he can't move, right? And there was so often where they struggled to throw the ball downfield. Now, is his ability to, change protections and read defenses and all that still at an elite level? Absolutely. He's one of the elite mental football IQ quarterbacks of all time, right? And that can still help you. I just think It didn't help either that the Jets schematically were like the worst offense in the league.
They were a mess.
So poorly. They were the worst coach team in the league this year, and there was just nothing really Rodgers could even do about that. So I just wonder would he be willing to take a backup or competition-ish type of role? Like if it's, I don't know, even if it's for the Raiders, let's say, and they either do or don't draft a quarterback. Could we bring an Aaron Rodgers in there just to kind of have something respectable out there? No disrespect to Aiden O'Connell and Desmond Ridder and Gardner Minshew, but you're just not going to win football games with that.
Yeah.
I mean, is it a team like that, or where is it? Is it a team where Aaron Rodgers is your backup, or what do we do?
I don't think there's any chance that he's really going to stick around and be a backup.
I don't think there's any chance that a team can sign him and just go, yeah, you're our starter at 41 or 42 years old.
See, but with this draft class being as barren seems like a harsh word to use, but there's just not a lot of plug-and-play quarterbacks in this upcoming draft, and that we already know that there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks.
And he went through a lot of injuries this year. He was playing through a lot. Can he actually legitimately survive 17 games? I know he played in every game this season.
I think Aaron Rodgers is starting somewhere next year. I don't know where it is. I think week 1 Aaron Rodgers is starting in the NFL.
I won't be shocked if this is it, because I think he was banged up all season, and there are limitations. It still feels like 2022, and even this season on paper he was above average. He was at least in maybe the second tier of quarterbacks, but I don't know where that would be, because you're going to get Sam Darnold signed before him, and I don't know what kind of money Rodgers is going to want to play for, and I don't know that after the 2 seasons in New York, the way he's gone through the full Jets experience, that's for sure. We'll see if he wants to, because I don't know. It yesterday did also kind of feel like, okay, we threw one last touchdown to Lazard, we threw one last touchdown to Adams.
I could see it being his last game, but I don't think he wants it to be his last game.
Well, I don't think he would want this to be his last year, the way it
right,
went. I mean,
right.
It was embarrassing front to back, honestly. And that's the weird part of looking at his numbers, and you go, this was actually one of the best quarterback seasons in Jets history. But it didn't matter, because we were 3-7 in one-score games. We didn't know how to win. Breece Hall had a major drop-off, and their defense went from first in grading last year to 24th this year. So Rodgers was certainly not the only reason that this all went wrong, as we've seen from just the dysfunction of the entire organization. They just have a void in leadership, and I just don't know. It's hard to say at 41 years old Rodgers can be the leader. I mean, they've tried that the last 2 years.
What about San Francisco?
We'd be a backup. You're not starting him over Purdy. You're just not going to do it.
Yet.
There's a yet, but that's what I'm saying, is could he go somewhere and back up and then be like, okay.
If he's gonna be a backup somewhere.
Actually, you know where I'd go if I were him? I'd go to Indy. Good offensive line, good set of weapons. Jonathan Taylor, questionable starter.
Yeah.
I would actually see. I would hit up Indy if they're starting Flacco willingly. Rodgers even now is still better than Flacco.
Right, I agree with you.
I would call Shane Steichen
if he's willing to. And maybe you're right. Maybe that is the best situation that he's going to have. Maybe that's his best opportunity to start.
Absolutely. And if they feel like
it sure doesn't feel like the Colts have all that faith in Anthony Richardson going into next year. So feels like they're going to do something. Maybe that is a spot.
That's one I would look at as a spot. Yeah.
Most impressive to me is Breece Hall, 90.6 rushing grade, 12 carries, 57 yards. So not a ton of output, but forced 5 missed tackles, and then the. Most disappointing is just the Dolphins vibes. Again, I think that this team is headed in the wrong direction.
Unless they get a generational trade haul for Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
If he's gone, they have a major.
I agree. I agree.
Major issue without him, because he's been the key to their whole offense.
100%. I mean, he was there this year and they were bad.
Yeah. So. It's not good.
Bengals Steelers. Bengals win this game, the Saturday night game. 19-17. They tried to keep their playoff hopes alive, but with Denver's win, they will be watching at home. Top 5 graded Cincinnati Bengals in this game. Cornerback Mike Hilton with an 84.5. Edge rusher Trey Hendrickson an 81.7. Tight end Mike Gesicki a 77.2. Linebacker Akeem Davis Gaither with a 74.6. Center Ted Karras with a 72.6. And then Joe Burrow, another elite day, 90.2. On Pittsburgh's side of things, edge rusher TJ Watt with an 88.8. Linebacker Landon Roberts with an 82.2. Edge rusher Alex Highsmith a 77.1. Tight end Pat Freiermuth with a 74.7. Defensive tackle Cam Hayward with a 74.6, and then quarterback Russell Wilson, a 72.7. One of these teams, funny enough, the one that looked worse is going to the playoffs, and the one that won the game and looked better is not. Stat that told the story or big picture, what do you got?
For me, this Steelers offense is just too reliant on one thing, and that's just chucking up go balls.
I agree. Georgia. I have the same thing.
Russell Wilson, one deep completion in this game. Mike Williams made a miraculous catch for that one. He should have completed a second one, but George Pickens dropped it, and we'll probably talk about that in a second. But when the Steelers complete more than one deep ball in a game this season, 20-plus yards in the air, they're 6-2. When it's one or fewer, they're 4-5. And in each of the 4 games in this losing streak, they've completed exactly one deep ball. There's just nothing else in this offense. Their offensive line's banged up. Obviously lost James Daniels early in the year. The tackle situation's a mess. They can't really run the ball that well. They have nothing. There's just nothing when it comes to play action. I think Russ only took, it might have only been, I forget the number, it might have only been one play action drop back in this whole game. There's no play action. There's nothing over the middle of the field. There's not a whole lot of quick game until they need to get into tempo late in the game and they're panicking. This passing game is just go balls. And this whole offense, honestly, is just waiting for Russ to just chuck a go ball and for it to be complete.
Yep.
And against good teams, as we've seen the last 4 weeks, you just can't. Even against the Bengals defense, you just can't chuck up go balls, especially in the cold weather in Pittsburgh, and expect that that's going to win you ball games. And now they're obviously they're ice cold. And they have to go to Baltimore again after what we saw from them in the last matchup. And they've only gotten worse since then. Do we have any faith at all? Any faith at all that Pittsburgh can go into Baltimore and win?
I don't, but it's always when I have no faith in the Steelers that they win.
And they're the one team that gives Lamar some sort of issue.
Right, exactly,
because of the D-line, but offensively, I mean, they're going to have to win this game. If they were to beat Baltimore, which would be I think it would be the most shocking of any of the 6 games that we're about to see, they'd have to win like 13-10.
Well, that's the problem with this team is they are, let me see, where are they overall? So overall in the season, 22.4 points per game. That's 16th in the NFL. They are right there, dead even. But over the last 3 games, it's 14.7. That is 28th in the NFL. You go back to their schedule, their last 4 games, they have scored 13 points, 17 points, 10 points, 17 points.
Can't win like that.
You can't. And that is also my stat that told the story is we've talked about this on this show and we've talked about it on the preview show. The Steelers want to be the Philadelphia Eagles. They don't have A.J. Brown. They don't have the offensive line. They don't have Saquon Barkley. So they are just trying to operate the same offense, which is smart quarterback play, hand the ball off to a running back that we really trust, good push from the offensive line, healthy yards per carry averages, consistent first downs, consistent conversions, really good in short yardage situations. They want to be that, and then shot plays. They want to complete a bunch of, like 3 or 4 of those shot plays a game.
And the weird part is it makes you wonder, with Arthur Smith as their OC, that's not Arthur Smith's offense either.
It's what
Arthur Smith runs stretch and bootleg and everything they run in Atlanta and even in a Shanahan sort of scheme, and that's just so there's a disconnect now between their offense and maybe it's the type of players they have.
Well, I mean, like they're doing play action and boots and things like that with Russell Wilson. They're still doing that, but like the overall offensive success to me is you're either the Philadelphia Eagles if you're the Steelers or you're not winning the football game, and they're just not built like the Steelers. They don't have the offensive line. They don't have Saquon. They don't have A.J. Brown. And they don't have Jalen Hurts to be the tush-push guy for any 3rd and 2 to basically be like, all right, it's free first down. They don't have the players to win that kind of a game. And that's why it's hard to have faith in the Steelers. Now, their defense, especially up front, is so good. Sometimes that could be the game wrecker there for them. But to me, that is also the stat that told the story. To me, it was once again the same script. The last 2 games, Russ has had less than 25% completion percentage on his throws beyond 20 yards. If it's not at 50 or 60%, I don't have faith that they're going to win the football game. So that's my most stat that told the story. My most impressive, Jamar Chase, Triple Crown, 127 receptions, 1,708 receiving yards, 17 touchdowns. So salute to Jamar Chase. Incredible season there for him. Had to mention him as the most impressive. The most disappointing is Lou Anarumo getting fired. I think Lou Anarumo is a really good football coach. I do. I think he was a big reason why this team made the Super Bowl, 4 years ago? Now, I understand. Yeah. That's a long time. But they have progressively taken players away from his defense, and they have not replaced them at that caliber. The only level of the field that's really been untouched is the linebackers, and I think they've taken a step down as the rest of the team has taken a step down. You know, DJ Reader anymore. You don't have Jesse Bates anymore. You don't have Sam Hubbard's not playing as well as he was before. Like you don't have these players. You basically just had Trey Hendrickson this year. That's it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to win like that. And I think Lou was a scapegoat because the Bengals were never going to fire Zach Taylor. But Lou's going to be working somewhere in the NFL.
No, he absolutely is. He's going to be with one of these teams, the Jets, the Saints, the Bears, I'm trying to think who's the one that fired New England. Sorry, I just couldn't think of the Patriots for some reason. He's going to be somewhere. He's an excellent coach, like you mentioned, and I do get it. He's been there 6-7 years, and this I mean, it caved in. It caved in bad this year, and I think there was an element where not only were the players downgraded from what they used to be, but also there was a lack of execution.
I know it doesn't work like this, but it's dumb. You traded away all of his players.
No, you're right.
What do you want him to do?
No, you're absolutely right. But it's 2 years in a row.
It's the accountability thing where, like, if the bosses make a dumb decision at any company, they're not going to fire themselves. And I think that's exactly where the Bengals are right now.
This is why.
They're not going to fire themselves at the very top. Instead, you're going to fire Lou Anarumo.
This is why they really, and any team is like this with that, they talk about the rookie contract window. This is why they needed to win the Super Bowl when they were in it. Because now you have what you have Burrow, Chase, Hendrickson, and maybe Higgins, maybe not, making all the money. Jesse Bates had to go. DJ Reader had to go. Chidobe Awuzie. I mean, you're talking about these. This is what happens: is your roster gets top heavy unless you draft extremely well, and they have not drafted extremely well the last couple of years. So no, it's 2 years in a row of their defense being this bad. And I get it. I do get it. I'm not saying it's Lou's fault, but I get making a change for the sake of, like, okay, maybe somebody comes in here and has a different vision, but Lou's absolutely going to be coaching with one of these teams that's about to make a hire. There's no question. I'll tell you what, if he was whoever ends up the Jets head coach, if Anarumo was our DC, I'd be thrilled. I'm with you. I think he's a fantastic coach. It's just this is the way it went down in Cincinnati, and there was an element where there was a lack of exexecution the last couple of years.
Anything else on this one before we move on?
Most impressive, Trey Hendrickson. Anytime I get to talk about the FAU legend,
Typical.
I have to do it. Best player in FAU history. We already know 7 pressures, 3.5 sacks in this game. Second consecutive season, Trevor, with 90 pass rush grade and 17.5 sacks. Just what a signing he's been. And I'll tell you what, he's the closer. He was the closer in this game. 90.7 pass rush grade this season in the fourth quarter. Third in the NFL for anyone with 100 pass rush snaps in the fourth quarter behind Myles Garrett and Chris Jones. He's just one of the elite pass rushers in the league. It feels like he's getting better every single year, which is crazy considering the level he's gotten to. Trey Hendrickson, you're the one guy of anybody on that defense that we know is absolutely safe. He ain't going anywhere. And most disappointing right across that matchup, look, came into the year, ended last year with questions about the Steelers' offensive tackles. Came into the year, even though they drafted Troy Fautanu, with questions about the Steelers' offensive tackles. Right. He's played one game this year.
Yeah.
Finished the year with questions about the Steelers' offensive tackles. Dan Moore Jr., Broderick Jones, and Fautanu obviously only played one game. They're just not good enough at tackle still. They need either Jones to get significantly better, which I'm not sure he's going to be able to do, or Fautanu to get healthy and fill one spot there, and we're still throwing Dan Moore Jr. out there. They just, between the quarterback and the offensive tackle situation, and really only having one legit receiver, it's still a long way to go on the Steelers' offense. Credit to them, again, they're never going to be under 500 under Tomlin, but
never.
There's a boatload of problems still on this offense, talent-wise.
All right, before we get to the next game, New Year's is time for resolutions, but instead of something that you'll forget in a few weeks here, how about a resolution to invest in your kids' financial future? With a kids' investment account for Fabric by Gerber Life, your investments will keep growing all year long after certain New Year's resolutions fade, giving your kids a solid start towards their financial future right now. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kid's investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Kids, they cannot invest when they're minors, but a kid's investment account allows you to invest on their behalf, giving their investments more time to grow. Whole thing is online, very easy to set up. Do it in just 5 minutes, and then you can just manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. The funds can be used on anything. When they're a kid, music lessons, after-school activities, summer camps, all that kinds of stuff. And then when they're young adults, maybe it's a first car, first house, starting a business, anything they need, really. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Start investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL, meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. Let's go back to the other Saturday game. Browns at Ravens. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this one, to be honest with you.
Nope.
Ravens win this game 35-10. Top 5 graded players for the Baltimore Ravens. Defensive tackle Michael Pierce, the big boy, the big fella. 93.8 overall grade. Running back Derrick Henry in this one, an 89.3. Cornerback Nate Wiggins, an 84.1. Safety Ardarius Washington, an 82.1. And then defensive tackle Nnamdi Madubuike with a 76.4. Lamar Jackson in this one, an 87.7. On Cleveland side of things, safety Rodney McLeod with a 71.9. Tight end Jordan Akins with a 79.6. Actually, he should be number one. We should flip that. Defensive tackle Sam Kamara with a 72.4. Center Ethan Posick with a 69.1. Offensive tackle Jermaine Ifedi with a 66.6. Bailey Zappi, one of 2 quarterbacks in this game for the Browns. Played most of the snaps, though. 41.0 overall grade. I don't have a ton to say about this game. The Browns QBs are absolutely the stat that told the story because they're not starting caliber NFL quarterbacks, and they were going up against a Ravens defense that had everything to play for. They were the early game on Saturday. They win that game. They win the division. Plain and simple.
Yep.
So you have 2 QBs in Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who over the course of this season, albeit in not a great environment, has not shown that he could elevate the team. And Bailey Zappi was in the same camp. Both of those quarterbacks graded within the 40s. They had passing grades in the 40s. And it was not nearly enough to be competitive against a team that's really damn good. Most impressive for me is Lamar. 3rd game in a row now with multiple big-time throws for Lamar Jackson. No turnover-worthy plays. This dude's rolling. And I think that they're in a spot where they feel good about getting revenge on next year. On what happened last year. And they obviously got to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. Easier said than done. Then they got to travel to Buffalo, we assume. A lot easier said than done.
We assume.
But, then they'll get in a situation where they'll face the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think that they'll feel pretty good about how their season was ended last year, how they came up short again by a toe to start the season. The most disappointing thing is the Flowers injury. Just not really knowing how much of a factor he's going to be moving forward. That is a killer for them because with Flowers fully healthy, I think that this is an offense that is capable of going into Buffalo and potentially beating the Buffalo Bills and then going into Kansas City and beating the Kansas City Chiefs. Without Flowers, it gets a little bit more tricky. So those are my thoughts on this game in Baltimore.
Yeah, real quick, I had a typo there on my part. You mentioned Rodney McLeod's grade there. It's actually 81.9 instead of 71.9.
So he was still there.
That one's on. Right. He was their highest. Okay. He was their highest graded player. I had a typo doing that this morning. Yeah, no, you mentioned. I'll start with the Flowers injury. I think Flowers is at that level of receiver. I don't think they can win a Super Bowl without him. That's their number one receiver, and it's really not all that close, especially at that position. Bateman's been better lately, but Flowers is the guy, especially with the ball in his hands. He's just incredible. You mentioned it with the Browns quarterbacks. If I was picking a stat out, I would say Bailey Zappi with a 34.7 passing grade and a clean pocket. Not going to get it done. We've seen enough of Bailey Zappi. When you walk into a game with Bailey Zappi versus Lamar Jackson, and this is a game you're going to get. That's why the Ravens were 3-touchdown favorites. And then most impressive, I'll go with Darius Washington at safety. And I think we've talked a lot about Kyle Hamilton moving to free safety lately, playing that single high rover center fielder back there. But you need a good box safety also to go in with that and play in the curl flat, play well in run defense. In Washington in this game, again, he just keeps proving 4 tackles, 3 targets in coverage, 2 of them broken up, didn't allow any catches, 82.2 coverage grade. Since week 9, Washington and Hamilton are 5th and 7th in the rankings for defensive grading among safeties. Two of the top 7
playing really well
in the second half of the season. That combination and what they've done schematically with them and just kind of the role that they've put them both in has made their secondary miles better than they were in the first half of the year, because everybody was talking, is their pass defense good enough? I think right now their pass defense is good enough. They need Flowers healthy, and I think the Ravens are clear. I think there's 5 inner circle teams that we think are going to win the Super Bowl, right? KC, Buffalo, Baltimore, Philly, Detroit. I think those are the 5. Minnesota, I get it. They've been great. They lost to the Lions twice. The road suddenly got a lot harder. If their road is Rams, Lions, Eagles, well, it'll take some miracle work to win all 3 of those games on the road. I get it with Minnesota. They're 14-3, but I think those are the 5 teams. And I think I would put Baltimore ahead of Buffalo, because I think head-to-head, I think that's a nightmare matchup for the Bills.
Baltimore feels like the team that nobody wants to play, right? They feel like that sleeping – to me, the Ravens feel like a sleeping giant type of a team where we identified very early this year that they were Super Bowl caliber. And it feels like outside of the Lamar MVP discourse, we haven't talked about the Ravens too much, and they have just continued to win, continue to get better. And I just think that they've played a really good brand of football, and in particular, a really high floor brand of football. You don't really walk into Baltimore, you don't play the Baltimore Ravens and man, they just lay an egg on you. That's
never.
You have to play a really good football game to beat the Baltimore Ravens. They have such a high floor, and that's why I think it feels like a safe bet when you project them to play anybody in the playoffs, is that they're going to show up for it. So I'm very excited to see that. And obviously, like we said, Pittsburgh plays them very, very tight. So it's no guarantee they even win that first one against the Steelers. You never know what could happen in the playoffs, but I'm excited to watch this Ravens team. Moving on to the next game. The Washington Commanders at the Dallas Cowboys. The Commanders 23-19. They win this one thanks to a big second half comeback. Washington's top 5 graded players in this game: edge rusher Dante Fowler Jr. with an 86.8, safety Jeremy Chin with an 83.4, running back Austin Eckler with a 76.5, guard Samuel Cosme with a 76.1, linebacker Frankie Louvu with a 74.8. Quarterback Marcus Mariota in this one, starting for Jaden Daniels, 88.1. Edge rusher Michael Parsons on the other side, on Dallas' side of things. He earned a 90.2 overall grade. Edge rusher Chauncey Golston with a 79.3. Guard Tyler Smith a 76.1. Wide receiver Jonathan Mingo a 75.7, and then guard Brock Hoffman with a 75.0. Quarterback Trey Lance a 68.0 in this game, starting for Cooper Rush. Thoughts on this one? Dad told the story. Where do you want to go with this?
Not much. I think as far as the way the game went, Mariota and the Commanders, because Jaden Daniels only played in the first half, they took over the game actually in the second half with Mariota at the helm. 4 drives in the second half. 3 of them scored touchdowns, 6.8 yards per play, only 2.6 in the first half with Daniels in there. And I think for me, there's a couple of things here. One, I want to just give the most impressive credit to Mariota, because we've seen him in 2 games this year, one against Carolina when Daniels got hurt, and one in the second half here. And he's come in and managed things well and won both games. 15 of 18, $161, 2 touchdowns, a big-time throw, and can still run a little bit too, 56 yards on the ground. I think Mariota, I'll tell you what, especially in this system, you could do a lot worse than him as your backup. And I think a lot of people were concerned before the season about, what happens? Jaden's so skinny and his elbow looks funny and this and that. He runs around, he gets hit like a Looney Tunes character, all that. But you could do this. A lot of teams doing a hell of a lot worse as a backup than Mariota. In 2 games, we've seen him in significant action. He's played really well. The thing that would concern me, this is my most disappointing part. I think this is why they struggled in the first half. The Commanders' offensive line picking up blitzes. Dallas blitzed him a lot in both games they played him. They gave him huge problems. They beat him in the first game. Darn near beat him in this game. 46.8 pass blocking grade against the blitz in this game. 52.2 this season. Now you mentioned it earlier in the show. We're going to play Todd Bowles in Tampa. And they gave us huge problems in week 1. Granted, it was week 1. It was Jaden's first start in the NFL. Probably still his worst start in the NFL. And Todd Bowles is notoriously good against rookies because of all those exotic looks he can give you. But that's, I think, the number one thing I'm looking to next week is, can they pick up blitzes? And can Daniels beat blitzes with his arm? He's generally against blitzes, he's won with his legs this year. Week 1, 29.5 passing grade against the blitz, against the Bucs. That's going to be the key to the whole thing. If he figures it out and we get a rematch going and Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels have the plan to beat those blitz packages, we've seen how the Bucs have covered for most of the year. If he gets the ball in the air to the right spots, Washington can win the game, but that's really the big thing for me is their offensive line. When they see a standard 4, they look pretty good. When you start blitzing them, it's a mess up there. They still have a lot of things to improve this team, and that's where it's going to be. That's where my eyes are going to be when they play down in Tampa next week.
Yeah, and the Commanders' offensive line also most disappointing for me just in general. First half of the season, 71.9 overall grade. They were, I think, a top 10 offensive line in the NFL. And then second half of the season, much worse, 62.2 overall grade. And so they've really struggled down the stretch here. And like you said, going into the playoffs, it's not like they're putting their best foot forward. It's not like they got a ton of momentum in that area. And going up against the Bucs defense that wants to be a little bit more aggressive because they know that they kind of need to do that in order to hold up in coverage. We're going to see plenty of that, and Todd Bowles is going to do what he needs to do to try to make Jaden Daniels uncomfortable, and the offensive line's just got to play better for the Commanders if they're going to go down into Tampa and get themselves a win. Marcus Mariota, also my most impressive just because of a great day that he had. Stat that told the story for me, ultimately, was Trey Lance. 0 for 3 on throws of 20 or more yards down the field. He was 20 for 34 with 244 passing yards overall, 0 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays. There were also a handful of throws where they don't get categorized as like bad misses or anything like that, but it was just straight-up misses. You know, he either didn't have the right touch on the ball, a little too much air on the ball, whatever it was. It looked like it was Trey Lance's first start of the season, and it just that was it. Like that's what happened in this game is he did not do enough at the quarterback position to win. They did not have enough playmaking from him. I liked some of the athletic plays that he made, you know, some of those rollouts, some of those scrambles. I mean, I think that Trey Lance is a very talented quarterback. He just
accuracy
does not have the ball placement and accuracy to really be a consistent disruptor. So very excited about the Commanders going down to Tampa. I think it's going to be a very fun matchup, and obviously it's going to look a lot different than it did in this game with Jaden Daniels out there. So different story. You're going to be clicking with a lot of your top players, and those guys are going to be out there.
And the best part, if he's healthy, we get Marshawn Lattimore versus Mike Evans.
Yes,
if he's healthy.
I think he'll certainly want to suit up for that.
A cortisone shot in there somewhere, maybe.
Something.
He's got to play against Mike Evans in the playoffs. He has to.
Yeah.
Especially after seeing Evans get 1,000 yards against the Saints yesterday.
Right.
When you know Lattimore was going to do his damnedest not to let that happen if he was there.
I think we talked about this.
He might have gone down swinging before he let him get 1,000
He might have got Mike Evans kicked out of the game, so maybe we're lucky.
He might come in for 5 snaps in this game and then go out swinging. Who knows? Even in the playoffs.
If the hamstring's bad, you just like a center, you just get him in there, use all the fouls, just get Mike Evans pissed off, hopefully get him to swing and get him kicked out of the game.
Hell, it happened in, what is it? Didn't it happen with Juwan Jennings kind of like that this week too?
Yeah, with Sean Murphy bunting.
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess it did. I guess it did.
Something about those Bucs, man. Just make you angry.
I guess it worked to Cardinals' advantage. Seahawks and Rams is the next game that I want to touch on here. Seahawks win this game 30-25. Top 5 graded players for the Seattle Seahawks in this one as we break this one down. Cornerback Artie Burns with a 90.2. Tight end A.J. Barner an 89.8. Tight end Noah Fant with an 82.5. Linebacker Ernest Jones a 77.9. And defensive tackle Leonard Williams a 75.7. Quarterback Geno Smith with an 81.7 overall grade in this one. We'll talk about, all right, is Geno coming back next year? Is he not? Pretty good game. Last game of the year. On the Rams side of things, they're resting a lot of their starters, but Jonah Jackson, top-graded player with a 91.8. Edge rusher Jake Hummel with an 88.5. Wide receiver Jordan Whittington an 81.8. Offensive tackle Warren McClendon Jr. a 75.6. And guard Steve Avila with a 72.7. Jimmy Garoppolo in this one, who was starting in place of Matthew Stafford with a 70.8. I told you before at the beginning of the show that the big news out of this one, I guess, is that the Seattle Seahawks fired Ryan Grubb, their offensive coordinator. You can go off and talk about Ryan Grubb, and then we'll sort of talk about the rest.
Well, I think it's just a matter of this. Now, this is one for me. So, like, Anarumo had been with the Bengals for a long time, and we've seen that kind of slowly degrade. This is one for me where I look at it, and look, we had gotten on, at times on Ryan Grubb about game planning and maybe we should run the football a little more and this and that. But at the end of the day, the biggest problem with this Seahawks team is their offensive line. 28th last year in pass blocking grade before Grubb got there. 26th this year. What is, I had other stats for this game, and at this point, it's kind of out the window for me. What was Ryan Grubb supposed to do with the interior of this offensive line the way it was?
Well, I think the criticism is like he didn't necessarily protect the offensive line as an offensive play caller or an offensive coordinator the way that he needed.
There comes a point where there's no protecting it.
I don't disagree with you.
Know.
I am more of the side of I am shocked that they got rid of him.
I mean, think about what he did. I think his offense is a very good fit for Geno Smith, and Geno reset.
Shocked, surprised.
Geno reset again the franchise passing record 2 years in a row now. The run game at times when they did go to it was pretty good. Walker and Charbonnet are good, right? He's gotten more out of these tight ends, and I know you have this written down here, than I thought he was gonna, right? And to be maybe the biggest thing of all that Shane Waldron couldn't do, he completely unlocked Jackson Smith and Jigba. Might have been the best slot receiver in football this year.
Right.
That's a lot of positive. And for a team that can't block, they couldn't block before he was there.
I am surprised they moved on.
This one I don't get. What? So it's on Ryan Grubb. They still went 10-7 with no offensive line. What did he? Something's not right in the building. What did he?
He must not have gelled with the coaching staff.
Maybe not.
He must not have gelled with Mike
Because
McDaniel.
I don't see a whole lot of what more was he supposed to do? They won 10 games. And their offense was good.
See, now he's going to go back to Bama because he's going to go back and be with Kalen DeBoer.
They probably need that.
Right, but now I wish Milroe would have stayed.
I'm getting into the whole Milroe band.
Now I wish Milroe would have stayed.
I'm not even on that show right now.
Come on.
The whole Bama thing is gonna. Well, they've got. I think DeBoer's got other plans for. I think if Milroe were to stay in college, I don't think it would be at Bama. I think he would. Anyway, well, I'll get into that speculation with Max. I just think with Ryan Grubb, it's got to be that. There's got to be some button heads in the building or something, because you look on the field like absolutely. Coaching staffs are going to disagree all the time, even on good teams. But I'm just curious as to what went into this and what exactly he did wrong, because I think he took an offense that absolutely – and there were times, yes, that we questioned a game plan or two of his. Yeah, absolutely. But
I think that was it.
But at some point you have to look at your team and just go, yeah, we can't block. What are we supposed to do? That was with the Jets last year when everyone's blaming Zach Wilson. I'm like, they can't block a soul. What do you want?
We
have guys on the field on their offensive line that aren't ready, that aren't even ready to be on the field, but they have to be because of injuries and whatever else. I would be very curious to see the details of this. I don't get this one.
It's got to be just a behind-the-scenes thing, because I do agree that there were some games where the Seahawks didn't emphasize the run game as much as they need to, the design run game. We've called that out a couple of times. And just the overall game plan, I think, at times has been puzzling, a little bit too pass-heavy, maybe a little bit too much on Geno's shoulders. And so you could say, like, all right, well, yeah, he broke the passing record, but it felt a little forced, right? Some of the passing emphasis was a little forced here. But he's coming from college to the NFL for the first time. And so for this to be his first year, I thought it was good.
It felt like the things wrong with their offense feel like details that can be fixed. Their offensive line.
Yeah, things to take into next year and learn.
Your O-line, you have to invest in it. We can further Smith and Jigba's process, or progress, I should say. And if there's one thing I have also, is that Geno struggled badly in the red zone. But it's year one. Now we're resetting again. And it does make you wonder, are they going to reset off of Geno, and what the hell are they going to do? Because there's not a whole lot of options, especially for them picking. I mean, you were the best record team to miss the playoffs. You're going to be picking 18th or whatever it is. I mean, I'm a little lost on this one. I won't lie to you. I really like Ryan Grubb as a coach. I think there were times where he had to adjust to the NFL game, but there's an intangible bit of this that goes on here. This team just went 10-7 with no offensive line. I'm a little lost on it.
My most impressive in this game in particular was the tight end duo, Noah Fant and A.J. Barner. Noah Fant in this game, 82.5 receiving grade, 6 targets, 5 catches, 63 yards, and a touchdown. A.J. Barner, 92.0 receiving grade, 5 targets, 5 catches, 34 receiving yards, and a touchdown. So a little tight end duo there. They were able to rack up as many yards because JSN wasn't taking all of them, because JSN had 5 targets, 4 catches, 9 yards. A lot of it was swings and behind the line of scrimmage stuff, and so that's why you didn't see a heavy yards output there from Jack Smith and Jigba. But anything else here before we move on?
Just a couple of impressive and kind of disappointing on the Seahawks defensive line. Just want kudos. Leonard Williams having his best season in his 10th year in the NFL. 3 pressures and 2 sacks in this game, 3 run stops. Finishes this regular season with an 88 overall grade, fourth best among all the defensive tackles in the NFL. In his 10th year in the league, had his best season. And on the other side, something that just kind of bums me out, Byron Murphy only played 3 snaps in this game. He came in questionable with a back injury, tried to give it a go, just couldn't go. Just played 3 snaps, and it just wasn't happening. Had a hamstring injury earlier in the year, and I think it's been an up-and-down rookie season for him between injuries and just kind of, I don't think he made maybe the immediate impact they thought he would. I think there's still a very good chance that he's a good player. So I think even especially in the run game, we saw at times when he's been really good. But seeing him only play 3 snaps, it'd be due to injury in a game where he really could have got some good reps, kind of bumps me out a little bit.
Chargers and Raiders. We got the Antonio Pierce press conference going on right now, and he hasn't been told he's fired. So, guess he's not fired.
We've seen weird things happen.
This
is always a weird Monday, isn't it?
It is.
It
is a very strange Monday here for the Raiders because you don't know exactly what's going to happen here. The Chargers won this game 34-20. That was the final score here. But the ripple effects, I think, for the Raiders are very interesting. I want to dig into it a little bit. But before we get to that, the top graded players for the Chargers, Quinn Johnston, monster day, 86.0 overall grade. Safety Derwin James, a 77.1. Safety Alohi Gilman with a 76.7. Wide receiver Lab McConkey with a 73.0. Edge rusher Tui Pelotu with a 72.0. And then Justin Herbert, another elite day, a 93.1. On the Raiders side of things, wide receiver Jacoby Myers, an 86.0. Linebacker Devon Diablo with a 79.5. Defensive tackle Zach Carter, 75.2. Offensive tackle Colt Miller with a 74.3. And then center Andre James with a 69.8. Quarterback Aiden O'Connell in this one, who Antonio Pierce said is a starting caliber quarterback in this league, a 62.1. I think Herbert's season's been fantastic. To me, that's sort of the stat that told the story. You had the first 6 weeks of the season where he was kind of coming off of the foot injury. You could tell he was not healthy. And then really from week 7 on, I mean, he has been a flamethrower. Right? He has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. They're riding that momentum heading into the postseason. This is a roster that I would tell you is not quite there yet. They're getting there, but they're not quite there yet. But holy cow, you got this guy at quarterback. You can upset somebody in the playoffs. Absolutely.
I think that's exactly.
I mean, they're traveling to Houston.
Oh, I expect them to win.
I'm picking the Chargers in this game. Yeah, I'm absolutely picking the Chargers.
I think that's what Jim Harbaugh, he said it at his opener. He's like, wow, I get to coach Justin Herbert. I get to coach this freak of nature. I mean, that's what you're looking at. And you're talking about, it's 6'6" and 240 and can throw the ball like that. And I think that's the biggest thing is we've seen the last couple of years under the old regime where Herbert's average depth of target was going down and down, and we're checking it down even though we have a quarterback who could throw it 80 yards. Like, what's going on here? But I think they've figured out they want to throw the ball downfield. In this game, 10-plus yard throws, 9 of 12, 3 big-time throws, 94.5 passing grade. And for the season, 96.4 passing grade on 10-plus yard throws. The only quarterback better, I believe, is Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's second in the NFL. That'll do. That's what Justin Herbert is. He's a vertical, big-armed passer in the same way that Ben Roethlisberger used to be in his prime. We're throwing the ball downfield. And wait till this team can actually run the ball. Just wait when they get all the play action and everything. Harbaugh,
and it's coming soon.
It's coming. You already know it's coming. Eventually, they're going to be able to run the ball well behind an offensive line that's getting better. I've talked about Joe Alt before, right tackle, just being a home run pick. But this is what we talk about with Justin Herbert. We're throwing the ball downfield. We're throwing 40-yard missiles. I mean, he can make throws that only 2 or 3 other quarterbacks in the league can make, and you saw it again in this game.
Quinn Johnson on the receiving end of a lot of those throws. Dude, Johnson, 14 targets, 13 catches, a $186.
You get that more often with the way McConkey's emerged, that's a different animal.
Yeah.
That's what you always needed out of Quentin. I don't know if we can get that every week or if that's just the Raiders being the Raiders.
Even if you get that a couple of times a year.
Like 3 times a year if you got something.
You're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, and just the threat of it, right?
Yep.
It adds an entirely different dimension because we've seen times this year where it's just Vlad McConkey, and that's it. If now you have a second guy, and if Quentin Johnston with all the size and speed can be the second guy, now you're not just talking beating the Texans. You're talking, we have a serious problem playing this team.
Yeah.
Because they can get really explosive on you quick.
Yeah. Most disappointing for me in this game, and just overall, and if you were to make a case against Antonio Pierce for him to get fired this season, to me it would be you have to point to the defensive side of the football. They're 30th in overall defensive grade this season, and they're 32nd in coverage grade. This is supposed to be Pierce's side of the ball. Like, this is supposed to be his expertise. And I won't sit here and say that they don't have some of their good built-in excuses. Max Crosby missed time. Christian Wilkins, their prize free agent, missed a lot of time. But the secondary's just been bad. I mean, the drop-off from what they were last year to this year has been noticeably poor. And they just have not gotten the impact from the rest of the players that they've needed to develop here on the defensive side of the ball. So, to me, if you were to make a case for him to be fired, that is what it would have been for, is the struggles on defense. This was, again, another, giving up 34 points, Herbert's going off against you. You got Quentin Johnston going off against you. And so I just, it's been disappointing. It's been disappointing for the Raiders defense.
Yeah, that coverage grade, 31.9 as a team. That's the lowest by any team in the last 4 years.
Yeah, I believe it.
And I'm just going to throw in their running game too. We know we've talked about it all year, like historically bad running game outside of last week with Amir Abdullah. 11 design carries in this game for 30 yards. And this is not a case. I think actually their offensive line is one of the more positive developments on their team. Colton Miller, Jackson Powers-Johnson, Dylan Parham, even DJ Glaze at right tackle, we did not expect to be really much of anything. He's been, I think, what you have on this offense, you have the offensive line, you have Brock Bowers. And you have Jacoby Myers, too. Let me congratulate Jacoby Myers, first 1,000-yard season of his career. Well done. He's played well through all of this. But 56.5 rushing grade as a team, worst by any team in the league since 2017. I'll be honest with you, I don't know where they're picking in the draft, what their exact pick is. And I know we've talked about this for the Cowboys a lot, but if the Raiders were to feel like they can't trade up and they can't get one of those two quarterbacks, I actually think the pick might be Ashton Jeanty for them from Boise. Because I look at this run game and I go, your O-line's not that bad. You don't have backs.
Right. They do not have the talent of backs that they need.
I think you throw, I don't know if it would be an Aaron Rodgers, a Sam Darnold, or whatever it might be, a quarterback if they can't get Cam or Shedeur. But you throw Ashton Jeanty in the backfield, all of a sudden that's a different animal.
I think about this as a potential landing spot for Rodgers, but then I go, Devontae's his best friend. Devontae just demanded that he get out of Las Vegas. And so I can't see Aaron Rodgers being like, yeah, let me be interested. Like, even independent of Devontae coming with him. Yeah. Devontae is not exactly going to speak highly of the Raiders.
Now, I'll say this, too. I don't remember where they're at in the draft right now, but I would fully –
who, the Raiders?
Yeah.
6.
I would fully expect them to make a million phone calls to the Browns at 2.
Sure.
About getting, or maybe even Tennessee at 1, but I don't think Tennessee's moving down to 6.
I don't think.
I think the Browns would move down to 6.
Yeah.
I think they're going to make every phone call on the planet to get to that second spot to the Browns ahead of the Giants.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably go get one of those quarterbacks because you have to.
Yeah. They quarterback, running back, receiver. You need an offense. It's good to have Brock Bowers, but, man, you need the rest of it.
It is great to have Brock Bowers, who, shout out to him, record breaker this year. Really good offensive piece for you moving forward. But, again, defense got to be so much better than what it was last year.
Oh, it's a multi-year project.
That's where I get worried about the Raiders. It's like, man, you just hired a guy that was supposed to be a big-time defensive coach. And, I think Antonio Pierce is – you can't really count last year with him taking over as an interim head coach. He was really just trying to probably keep his head above water last year. This year's his first year as a head coach. And, he said in his post-year presser a few minutes ago, talked about how, like, okay, well, I need to trust my gut a lot more. I basically, it sounded like he was doing a lot of things or making a lot of decisions of like, okay, well, this is what a head coach would do, instead of like, well, this is what I would do. And I think if he's sticking around, it just obviously needs to be a lot more of that.
If there's if they're giving a benefit of the doubt to this defense, it's because of the injuries. Crosby was hurt.
Right.
Wilkins was hurt.
Right.
Malcolm Kuntz got hurt early.
Yep, and he would have been a good player for them.
And I thought he was their second best pass rusher. I think they just had no corners left by the end of the year either. I think if that's where you're given a benefit of the doubt, it's there. But how far does that leash kind of stretch, right? And you can't be. They were dead last. I mean, they were by far the worst coverage team in the league. You just can't have it.
Right. Bears and Packers. The Bears finally win in Green Bay. Shout out to Chicago. I don't know if their fans actually wanted that at this point. I think they might have wanted the loss and a better draft pick. But I think there's a lot of Chicago Bears fans out there who say,
something.
Damn the draft pick. We needed a win in Green Bay because it had been a long, long time since they had beat the Packers, specifically in Lambeau. So they get the win 24-22. Top 5 graded Chicago Bears in this one. Guard Matt Pryor with an 83.6. Cornerback Kyler Gordon with an 83.2. Cornerback Jalen Johnson with an 81.9. Wide receiver DJ Moore, 79.4. And the offensive tackle Darnell Wright with a 78.0. Quarterback Caleb Williams in this one, 56.4. On Green Bay side of things, guard Elgton Jenkins was their top graded player at an 80.8. Offensive tackle Rasheed Walker with a 79.8. Guard Sean Ryan with a 79.9. Linebacker Edgerrin Cooper, with a 76.2. Cornerback Carrington Valentine with a 74.7. And then Malik Willis in this one, who came in for an injured Jordan Love, here in just a 42.5 overall grade here. Stat that told the story for me, Bears offensive line. Very critical of them throughout the season. Very hot and cold, very up and down. Still think it's an area that they should address when we get to the draft. But 21.6 pressure percentage this week, 5th best that they had all season. So shout out to Chicago in that regard. I think the offensive line really stepped up. On the other side of the coin, Packers pass rush. I'm worried about this team. They're now going into Philadelphia. They're going into the playoffs, and this team really still cannot get after the passer. And Devontae Wyatt, I think, has played well this year, so shout out to Devontae Wyatt. He's my most impressive. I think Devontae Wyatt has specifically played well because, to me, he was one of the players that was on the team already that was drafted to play a position that didn't really exist in the 3-4 defensive scheme they had the previous year. Now, in a 4-3 Jeff Hafley scheme, he is able to play as a 3-technique defensive tackle, and that's what he succeeded at when he was at Ohio State. So, to me, that is why Devontae Wyatt is shining amongst a defensive line that is generally playing worse than expectations. But the pass rush overall, 54.4 pass rush grade as a team for the Packers in this one. And it has been an area of concern that we have talked about multiple times throughout the show. And going into the playoffs, you are going in Philadelphia against the best offensive line in the NFL. That's not good. That, to me, is the killer matchup here, is how bad the Packers have been at pass rushing and how good the Eagles' offensive line is. And I was hoping, for the Packers' sake, that they would look better against a hot and cold Bears offensive line, and it was the opposite of how I wanted them to look. So those are sort of my storylines here for this game.
So as far as just this game itself, I think the Packers made a boatload of mistakes that really killed them, right? I think you had the Josh Blackwell punt return touchdown early. That put him in a hole.
Of course.
Jaden Reed fumbled on a jet sweep. Kevin Byard darn near killed Malik Willis.
Holy cow.
I mean, and that fumble, that was in Bears territory. Later in the game, they're calling a jet sweep again with Jaden Reed on 4th and 3. That didn't work. They had a chance when the Packers kicked the field goal that gave them a lead late. They had a chance to get a first down and really milk the clock out, and they just didn't do it. They never put the Bears away in this game, and they kept making mistakes. And the Bears, credit to them, credit to Caleb Williams and the crew over there. They finally found a way, like you mentioned, to get a win over the Packers. But I'm with you. I'm worried about this Packers team. I think you have multiple issues. One, they can't rush the passer. It's not good. Two, even when Jordan Love was in this game before he went down with, elbow injury, I think it was, an elbow contusion, it's just not clicked. It's not clicked this year. 16 big-time throws, 13 turnover-worthy plays. And I watched them lately, and I'm looking at their passing game, and everything's taking too long. It's almost too vertical. There's no rhythm to it. And the run game's been spectacular. They run for 180 yards in this game, too? They've been running the ball well all year. Josh Jacobs, honestly, their offensive MVP. But it's just something not right about this Packers passing game. There's no rhythm. Takes too long, and you can feel Jordan Love in the pocket, constantly looking for the higher option, the deeper option first. And I just think everything, it just looks disjointed right now. I'm with you. I think they have an extremely tall task going into Philly next week because they've got issues with the pass rush. Mm-hmm. They have issues throwing the ball themselves, despite Jordan Love. Christian Watson, they're saying he might have torn his ACL.
Yeah,
so now you lose the one-size speed guy you have. I don't think this receiving core, I know it's been a topic of discussion both ways about, the Packers, do they or don't they need a number one receiver? I think they do. I think this is something they need to look into in this offseason because these guys, they're decent. I like Jaden Reed. I like Romeo Doubs, right? Wicks has struggled. Watson's always hurt. They need to look into getting a real deal number one receiver somehow. I don't know if it's in the draft or in free agency. And then middle of the field coverage, not as big a concern for me against Philly because they throw the outside so much. But if they were somehow win that game and go to Detroit, how in the hell are you covering over the middle of the field? I think this Packers team has a lot of issues. And I think the first one is that the Jordan Love hot streak from the second half of last year has not carried over. I think it's a big problem, and especially against the way Fangio plays zone defense and doesn't let you get over the top. I don't know. I aside from a Jalen Hurts meltdown, I'm running out of ways for the Packers to beat Philly in Philly next week.
What else in this game do you got before we move on?
Most impressive, I'll go on the Bears side, one slight bit of optimism. Darnell Wright at right tackle. We're going to talk a lot about the Bears offensive line this offseason. If Tevin Jenkins is staying or going, who's playing center, what do we do with Braxton Jones? But Darnell Wright's the one rock-solid guy there.
I think so too, man.
One pass rush loss in 37 reps in this game, 7 positive run blocks. He ends the regular season as the 5th highest graded right tackle in the league.
I like Darnell Wright a lot when he was coming out, so this music to my ears. I love hearing this.
He was. I know it'll always be the debate about whether they should have taken Jalen Carter, which I get. Jalen Carter's great, but Wright felt like a high floor pick who would get the job done eventually. He's gotten the job done this year. He's the one guy of those 5 up front that I think is truly just safe.
Giants and the Eagles. Speaking of the Eagles, good little transition here. Philly wins this game, albeit with their backups in the game, 20-13. Top 5 graded players for the Philadelphia Eagles. Number 1 on the list, Sidney Brown, their safety, with a 92.0. Cornerback Isaiah Rodgers with an 83.9. Linebacker Orion Burks with a 77.9. Wide receiver Jahan Dotson, a 77.0. And then cornerback Keely Ringo with a 76.8. Quarterback Tanner McKee in this one, a 64.8. On the Giants side of things, linebacker Darius Muasau with a 85.5 at the very top of the list. Defensive tackle Elijah Garcia with a 76.0. Edge rusher Tomlin Fox with a 75.9. Edge rusher Kayvon Thibodeau, 74.4. And then defensive tackle Elijah Chapman with a 73.5. Quarterback Drew Lock in this one, a 63.4. We have sort of the same talking point with Drew Lock as the stat that told the story in this game. Lock had 22 completions. One of them was over 10 yards. Just didn't throw the ball deep enough to win this football game. I mean, you have to take more risks than that. You have to push the ball deep down the field. Doesn't matter if you're playing Philly's backups or Philly starters.
I'll be honest with you. I think this was going back. I don't know why I watched the tape of this game. I'm a sicko, but the Giants mailed it in. Their Super Bowl was last week. This was the most going through the motions game I've ever watched. This was the Giants running the clock out. They just were like, we won last week. That was fun.
Yeah.
All right, draft pick time. They both teams went through the motion. They just walked on a football field.
John Mara said, "Don't blow it again."
Yeah, that's honestly.
He might have, honestly, because in the postseason presser that he gave when he was basically saying that Joe Shane and Brian Dable are coming back, like he sounded pissed. He sounded like all right, the defense has regressed. I don't know if Brian Dable is gonna continue to have play calling duties. I think the roster is worse.
Well, Malik Neighbors is the only good thing that happened to this team this year.
But yeah. I'm keeping all of these guys. And then he said in one clip that I saw, going around social media, it's like, what's the timeline for this team getting better? And he basically was like, well, better be quick because I'm running out of patience. It's like, all right, well, you probably should have fired Joe Shane and Brian Dable then.
Yeah, running out of patience doesn't do you a whole lot of good. Because if you're going to continue to exhibit that patience, then we're going to see this for another year.
I can't remember who tweeted this out. Somebody tweeted this out this morning. And they said that owners are reluctant to do searches for general managers or head coaches because it's incredibly time-consuming and it's expensive. this is what you need to do as an owner. Like, do you want to win football games or not? I like Brian Daboll.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here like, if you're going to have this attitude with Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, just fire him. And I also read this quote, and it's a little bit of paraphrasing probably, but it's like, John Mara said, I can't give you concrete reasons why I'm keeping these two. I just feel like they're still the right guys for the job. So it's just a whole gut feeling of not wanting to go through a coaching search. And I wonder if, I really do wonder if the Giants had the number 1 overall pick, if he would have fired both of them. Because now, sitting at 3, you don't necessarily control that destiny. You don't necessarily control having your pick of any quarterback. And instead, he looks at job openings that if he were to fire Brian Daboll, you're competing against Jacksonville, who has Lawrence. You're competing against New England, who has Drake May. Who are the other openings? Nothing in no for New Orleans, no for the Jets.
There's one more good one. And the Bears.
Yeah. Obviously. And the Bears with Caleb Williams, right? That's another one. So if the Giants were to fire their head coach now, they're trying to lure somebody in
to maybe get Cam or Shedeur.
With maybe Cam or Shedeur. And you're competing against a Caleb Williams opening, a Trevor Lawrence opening, and a Drake May opening. That might be the actual reason why they didn't clean house this year.
And if there was any thought about Bill Belichick, he's already taken a job now.
Well, I don't think there was any thought, because if there was any thought at all whatsoever, it would have gotten back to Bill Belichick, and he would not have taken the North Carolina job. If there was any NFL job for Bill Belichick, he wouldn't have taken the North Carolina job, in my opinion. So, all that to say, I think the Giants are in a bad spot. I think Giants are in a really bad spot. You said going through the motions in this game. I wonder if the Giants are just going to go through the motion next year and wonder, like, are these, because
I think you have to force it. I think if it takes trading up, if there's one of those two guys that they absolutely have to have, do whatever it takes to get them.
And I'm sort of leaning towards that direction, but it just feels as though they're just waiting a year to totally move on to next year. You hope the quarterback class is better. You hope that maybe you're in a better position to draft a guy that's a little bit different. But even next year's class, I mean, there's no guarantee that that's necessarily going to be the case. I mean, they got a couple of intriguing guys since guys came back, right? I mean, Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller.
It's a wait and see class.
Arch Manning, there are some guys there. And, of course, I think John Mara would love nothing more
than a Manning,
than to have the number 1 overall pick next year.
Yeah.
Right? He would love nothing more than to long play this whole thing, maybe keep the coaching staff that he doesn't really believe in, tell them to draft a quarterback that they know is not going to be that good, and they get the number 1 overall pick, and he gets to draft.
If they get the number 1 pick, you're talking about keeping him for 2025. Yeah,
yes,
I mean,
yes.
Yeah, for 26 in that scenario, there's just no way. But
so, anyways,
I don't know. A reset is coming again at some point. It's just a matter of when.
Which is a shame. I like Brian Daboll. I just think that it feels like it's in a no-win situation here with the New York Giants. No matter how you slice it.
Pretty much.
Anything else in this game that you want to hit on?
Most impressive. I'll just talk my most impressive player here. Just Isaiah Rodgers. He would be the next man up if something were to happen. Quinyon Mitchell or Darius Slay played a really good game in this one. Pass breakup, 2 stops, a couple of good kick returns too. He's a valuable piece for them. If something in the playoffs were to happen to Quinyon or Darius Slay, they would feel good about plugging Isaiah Rodgers in a corner.
Bills Patriots, one of the teams that we just talked about. Hey, speaking of quarterbacks.
Oh, boy.
Holy cow, Joe Milton. We'll get to that in a second. New England wins this game 23-16, so they move from the number 1 overall pick. Now they're at the number 4 pick, so we'll dig into that in a second. But New England won the game, so we're going to give them their props by listing out their top 5 graded players first. Linebacker Christian Ellis, number 1 on the list with an 82.2. Cornerback Isaiah Bolden with a 77.5. Wide receiver Keyshawn Butte a 77.1. Cornerback Alex Austin with a 76.6. And then guard Tyrese Robinson with a 75.4. Joe Milton III. 95.8 overall grade. Did you think you'd see it in your lifetime, Dalton?
I never saw it from him in college.
On Buffalo's side of things, edge rusher Javon Solomon, shout out to him. Liked him in last year's draft class, an 80.4. Guard Alec Anderson with a 78.3. Linebacker Edifwan Olafoshio with a 70.2. Ray Davis with a 70.1. And then cornerback Kyer Elam with a 69.3. Quarterback Mitch Trubisky in this one, a 61.1. All right, Joe Milton's the entire story of this entire game. How the hell did this happen?
Okay.
94.4 passing grade.
No, okay.
22 for 29.
Yeah.
241 passing yards, 3 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays, 83.3 adjusted completion percentage. That's the craziest part to me. 83.3 adjusted completion percentage. I know the guy's got a howitzer. You don't got to show me the highlight of him absolutely blasting it into the front pylon.
I would be willing to bet he's at Michigan or at Tennessee. He never had that high an adjusted completion rate.
So I looked it up.
Did he?
It happened twice.
Twice.
It happened twice when he was at Tennessee.
In his whole college career.
Yes,
right.
it happened twice.
And Tennessee throws screens.
And it was like
crazy.
UConn, and I cannot remember who the other team was that he faced.
Right. Let's start with this, and then I'm going to get into I don't even know what's going on here. Joe Milton was really good. I mean, the touchdown to Booty back across the field. I mean, I don't know. That is legitimately a Josh Allen throw.
Arm ignorance, right?
Yeah.
And I think actually the other touchdown as well. The one that was front pylon, where he runs to the sideline, sort of stops, and then goes, "All right, it's week 18." Boom!
Yeah.
And just rockets it about as fast as anyone possibly can.
And that ball, it either fell incomplete or there was a holding call or something.
So he didn't catch that one?
Something brought it back. I think it was a penalty or something that brought it back. But no, that's a freak throw. I mean, you're talking Josh Allen.
But he had the 2 throws that are like, okay, normally week to week, you won't even see him attempt these throws.
No. Nobody would attempt these. I mean, just he just showed. I mean, he is a freak. He's just, and even then, there were times I thought in this game where he played on time very well. Joe Milton was. You look at this tape, you go, wow, okay, people are going to be keeping their eyes and ears out.
Who's trading for Joe Milton?
For him.
Who's trading for Joe Milton?
Not this year. They're
Is it
not.
the Raiders?
Not this year. Nobody's going to do it.
Did the Saints?
Nobody's going to do it this offseason. Saints is a good call though. They're going to want a Manning too though down there in New Orleans. That'll be a thing. But,
Carr's going to win too many games. They're not going to get a Manning.
Is Carr going to be healthy for enough games? Anyway, all right, here's what Milton was great. Kayshon Boutte was great, most impressive, right? 2 good games against the Bills. Actually, he's so young. He's still only 22 years old. He could, for as much as the Patriots are starved for receivers, maybe Kayshon Boutte's an answer here. First, it was the first 100-yard game by a Pats wide receiver all season?
Didn't know that.
Just sick. The only other 100-yard day for them by anybody was Hunter Henry. I forget which game it was, but yeah, first 100-yard game by a Patriots wide receiver all year. Okay, I want to get into the scope of this Joe Milton thing and Gerard Mayo and all of that. You heard what Milton said after the game?
No, I didn't see any of this.
They asked him because you figure, okay, Drake May played the first series, 3 plays.
Yep.
Handoff, incompletion, sack, came out.
Oh, yeah. Didn't you say you didn't know he was playing?
Joe Milton was not aware that he was going into this game until after kickoff.
See, that is why we saw the ridiculous throws. Because, again, he went, week 18, didn't even know I was playing.
So they prepped Drake May all week.
Mm-hmm.
In a game you're going against the Bills' backups. Mm-hmm. If there's anybody that just needs good reps just to get good reps, it's Drake May. And instead, Gerard Mayo decided, you've seen The Dark Knight. Everyone's seen The Dark Knight, right? Mm-hmm. And the Joker walks out of the hospital and he's hitting the button over and over. He blows it up on the way out. Mm-hmm. That felt like Gerard Mayo here. Because now what you have is Drake May in a game against the Bills' backups, not getting any of those reps. All he did was get sacked by Von Miller and sit down. Joe Milton comes in and plays like this. Gerard Mayo gets fired, and on the way out, he lets Milton play this game. And now you've got a corner of Patriots Twitter saying Milton's better than May, which is just nonsense, obviously.
Did they play Milton to lose?
I didn't do a great job of it.
But again, His best, most impactful throws were throws that nobody even attempts.
No.
They don't even attempt
the
these
screwed
throws.
up part, if you were going to play to lose, then put Brissett in there.
But Brissett could have won you the football game. He's winning football games before. Genuinely,
he's not going to go do freak shit like Milton.
But genuinely, the best course of action that you could have had to purposefully lose this game was to play Joe Milton.
Or just do what the Giants did and throw the ball, throw screens all day. Whatever. I mean, I don't...
I wonder if the speed in which they fired Gerard Mayo, I think it was probably happening regardless. But the fact that took them out of picking number 1 overall to now picking number 4, I really do wonder if they played Joe Milton to lose that football game.
I wonder if Mayo knew he was getting fired and he wanted to get Milton a shot to try to win the game anyway. I think what you have is a giant organizational
If Mayo knew he was getting fired, I'd play Drake and win.
But what the Patriots have a quarterback. The number 1 pick is not as big a premium to them. They can get Kelvin Banks or whatever.
Of course it's a premium. What are you talking about?
For the trade down, sure. But if you're going to take a player, if you need an elite player, they're going.
I agree with you, but
unless they wanted Travis,
brushing over the trade part.
Okay, then they missed the trade down part. Fine. But I don't think it's like as big a deal as it would be to the Giants losing the number 1 pick when you need one of the 2 quarterbacks. This is one to me where I go, why is this not a spot? Why couldn't Drake May have gone out there and done this, and you let him do this and win a game and feel good about next year? Instead, you put him out there for 3 snaps and let him get sacked. That's probably. I mean, it's again. I don't know. I don't know if Mayo was just lighting a match on the way out or what. But none of this made any sense to me at all. And for Milton, if you're going to sit May for the sake of his health, okay, that's what you're going to do. And Milton will take reps with the one all week, and we'll go about it like that. Fine. For him not even to know he was coming in until after kickoff. He just went out there and improvised to win. I don't even know what is the point. What was the point of this? I don't get it. I mean, that's probably, again, why they're getting a new head coach. But I have no idea what the point of this game was. I have no idea.
That's all I've got in this game. You got anything else? We're moving on.
And the only other bit is there's been all of the rumors that they want Mike Vrabel as soon as possible. So that might...
Yes. So that is... I look at the speed in which they fired Gerard Mayo, and I agree completely. I think that they watched Mike Vrabel interview with the Jets and rumored that he's going to interview with the Chicago Bears. And I think Robert Kraft was like, nope, we're opening that up immediately. So we're not wasting another second of our time. Because if it's not about that, why wouldn't you fire him today, right? Why would you fire him immediately after the game? What's the reason for that? You just won. You won one of the 4 games that you've won all season. You don't want to give your locker room, you don't want to give your players, you don't want to give your head coach, which Robert Kraft said himself that he set up to fail. You don't want to give him that time to enjoy one of 4 wins that he had, knowing that Mayo will never get a head coaching job in the NFL again. You fired him because you wanted to call Mike Vrabel immediately and tell him, don't get on the plane to Chicago. No. I bought you I'm sending you my private jet right now. You come to New England. That's what I think happened.
It seems, I'm just reading up on this now, that everybody, even in league circles, thinks Vrabel's going to be their head coach.
I think so,
it's
too.
It's just going to happen.
I think so, too.
It's just crazy, that process, how that all went. And I just don't understand, like, how do you not just let Drake May play in this game? But
and rob us of the Joe Milton experience? What are you doing?
Maybe I'm just a...
What, do you hate fun?
I hate fun. I hate it. It's awful.
We know.
What do we do it for?
Texans Titans. Houston wins this game 23-14, despite the Titans' best efforts. The Houston Texans in this game, their top 5 graded players: edge rusher Derek Barnett at the very top of the list with a 90.1 overall grade. Running back Damian Pierce, the forgotten one, 82.9. Linebacker Neville Hewitt with a 78.1. Linebacker Devin White, also the forgotten one, 76.6. Defensive tackle Tommy Togiai rounding out the list at number 5 with a 74.6. Davis Mills in this one, 66.7. On Tennessee's side of things, defensive tackle Sebastian Joseph Day with an 81.9. Cornerback Jarvis Brownlee Jr. an 81.6. Linebacker Jerome Baker an 81.4. Offensive tackle John Owuku with a 77.8. Defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons with a 76.2. Quarterback Will Levis in this one, a 47.2. The Titans never stood a chance in this game, as most of the games that they played this season, because of quarterback play.
Last in the league in passing grade.
There it is. That's it.
Last in the league in record.
It's the entire, right. They're picking number 1 overall because their quarterback play has been terrible. And when we did, Connor and I did the Fixing the Titans episode like 3 or 4 weeks ago on the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. And there were genuinely a good amount of Titans fans who were, I'll say, upset with us, not giving Will Levis enough consideration for him to be the quarterback next year. Will Levis is not the quarterback of this team next year. Not a chance. And it looked bleak when we were recording the episode. You have no choice but to move on now. And you're picking number 1 overall, and there's rumors that they're interested in Cam Ward. But ultimately, this game and this season for the Titans, quarterback play was not good enough.
Essentially, whichever week that was, I think it might have been against the Jaguars when he just took the entire game plan out of Levis's hands. Remember that? I told you about that just complete lack of trust that had taken over from Ryan Callahan. That was it. I forget if it was like week 12 or 13, something like that. That was, you could see it in the play calling. These quarterbacks, maybe Rudolph stays as the backup for the fun of it, but Will Levis is not going to be on this. This is their quarterback next year will be Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders.
Yep.
That's just where it is. There's rumors that they love Ward. There's the whole process to go. We got 3 months to go before that, but it's going to be a rookie, and they're getting to pick. They're getting their pick of it as the first team picking, and that's just where it's at. It's not Will Levis.
The most impressive that I have in this game in particular is Dameon Pierce, because I just wonder where he's been the whole time. Like, 19 carries, 176 rushing yards, 168 rushing yards after contact, 85.3 rushing grade. Looks kind of like the Dameon Pierce that we saw early on in his NFL career. So I don't know. I was always kind of confused when everybody was like, yeah, we're just going to bring him down the depth chart. Now Dameon Pierce doesn't play anymore. I was like, wait a second. He was good. Why are we doing this? And now he gets to play again, and he's good. I was very.
No, you're right.
I was very surprised at how it felt like the Texans were just very cool with like, oh yeah, Dameon Pierce is a good running back, and we're just not going to care about that at all whatsoever. And he just showed once again this week that he's a good running back.
19 carries in this game, 21 the entire season prior. And when Joe Mixon went down, they turned to Cam Akers.
Right.
Knowing they had this on the bench.
I don't know, man.
I'm kind of lost on that too. I'm with you. Because, I mean, even times, I know Joe Mixon's your horse, but we can get him some air once in a while. And we could put another guy in there. And if you've got a guy running like this, breaking tackles, I mean, he's always done it, right? I know last year he got in the doghouse. Was he fumbling, or what was the deal last year? I forget what it was last year.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
Was that it? Is that how we got here? I don't remember that off the top of my head, but it might have been.
2 years ago, he was really good. Last year...
Let's look.
Last year, there was some issues, and Devin Singletary kind of took the job
No, he had 4 fumbles his first year. That year where he was really good, and he almost rushed for 1,000 yards. He had 4 fumbles.
They just decided Singletary was better.
The year after that, his carries got cut. He only had 149 carries. He had 0 fumbles. He wasn't as dynamic of a runner. Yards per carry average was way down. So I guess that's it. But damn, I felt like they gave up on him real early.
Yeah, you hate to see talent wasted like that.
Yeah,
that's a
he's
big
a good
thing
player.
For me. Just most impressive for me, real quick. How about Derek Barnett getting a lot more run with
top of that list?
The starters kind of rotated in and out for the Texans here. 4 pressures, a sack, 2 run stops, a fumble return touchdown. He blew up a jet sweep, or it was fumbled, but he was going to blow it up anyway. And then he houses a touchdown. Derek Barnett, I think, we talk a lot about Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson. He's kind of that third-ish pass rusher in that mix. He's still a good player. I know, former first-round pick. Not everything went right when he was with Philly, but found a good rotational role for himself, and I like the way he played in this game too.
Jags and Colts. We don't need to talk a ton about this game. Indy wins it 26-23 in overtime.
The overtime part's hilarious. The fact that this game went to overtime.
I mean, it had to. It's just a classic AFC South
It's
matchup.
Jags Colts. It's just always great.
Indianapolis' top 5 graded players on the day. Safety Julian Blackmon with a 90.0. Defensive tackle Grover Stewart with an 85.0. Offensive tackle Bernard Ryman with an 81.5. Safety Nick Cross, a 75.8. And then edge rusher Tyquan Lewis, a 75.1. Joe Flacco in this game, a 73.8. And on Jacksonville's side of things, edge rusher Eric Armstead with an 89.6. Safety Andrew Wingard, an 80.9. Tight end Brenton Strange, a 79.6. Linebacker Devin Lloyd, a 78.4. And then cornerback Tyson Campbell, a 70.9. Mac Jones in this one, a 60.8 overall grade. I don't have anything really on stat that told the story, most impressive, most disappointing. The game itself, certainly for this season, was largely pointless in my opinion. I think the bigger storyline and the bigger talking point that I want to get into is what's happening in Jacksonville right now. They fired Doug Peterson, but they keep Trent Baalke. We've sort of hinted at it and had little conversations throughout this show, but that's very shocking to me that Trent Baalke is allowed to stay. Because the candidates that the Jacksonville Jaguars would want the most, Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson, they're not going to take a job without say with the GM. They're not. Ben Johnson's already said as much. Mike Vrabel, with how much he was burned, with how things ended in Tennessee, is not going to do that. And now you're hamstringing them to a general manager. And it was reported early on Monday that, well, yeah, they're keeping Trent Baalke as the general manager, but the coach is going to report directly to the owner, independent of the general manager. Hey, yeah, that's definitely worked literally ever. In what industry does that work? When you mess up the power pyramid of, hey, I report to my boss reports to their boss, and their boss reports to the owner. When you mess that up, when you try to get creative with how that hierarchy works, it either fails or you create a massive rift in the company. Because all of a sudden, well, if I'm directly reporting to the owner, why would I respect my boss? Well, all of a sudden, when things start to not go well, what are you going to do? Oh, it's GM's fault, of course. I don't talk to them. I talk to you. You know I talk to you. And the GM's going to go, well, it's got to be the head coach's fault. I'm drafting the good players, and they're not playing them right. You know that. I talk to you. We got a good relationship here. Dalton, when has this ever worked?
Nope, it doesn't.
I think
you mentioned it,
man.
I think you mentioned it right where it doesn't work anywhere.
It doesn't work anywhere.
And I think it's a common thread among the teams that we see are just dysfunctional, right? When you think about Jets, Giants, Jaguars, Bears, at times even the Saints, Browns, the chain of organizational leadership is just not in sync. It's just not. I mean, I certainly can tell you I've seen it with the Jets the last couple of years. No one knows who's in charge with the Jets. There's Woody Johnson, Madden rumors. There's Aaron Rodgers. There's Robert Saleh. All that stuff. The Bears are like this. The Bears are about to do the same thing. They're keeping Ryan Poles and hiring another new head coach. And there's a lot of people in Chicago questioning that. Mm-hmm. We've seen it. You look at even the Bills. For as much as sometimes I get on Sean McDermott. McDermott and Brandon Beane are always in lockstep. Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are always. This is the problem with the Cowboys. Everything runs through Jerry. And everybody below him is just kind of doing whatever Jerry wants. I mean, it's a theme. And I think with the Jags, I think the two things that stick out to me are, so now we're going to be disjointed with leadership again. We've got a quarterback we absolutely cannot protect at all. And people in the public rip him to shreds when he's just never protected. And honestly, outside of Brian Thomas, their last three drafts have just been awful. To me, I think this process all starts when you took Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson, when Hutchinson was far and away the best player in college football that year. That's even the micro issue with Trent Baalke, if you will. It's not that you're keeping a general manager who is shown that the team is not in a better position now than when he was hired to be the general manager. It's that you are keeping a general manager that is very specific about what he likes. For the last year and a half, they've been an absolute train wreck.
Like, look at the players that he drafted when he was in San Francisco. And obviously, I'm not saying that they're like all busts or anything like that. Some have been more some have gotten closer to their ceiling than others, but this is a very particular GM. This is a general manager that, again, like you said, this guy prioritized Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson. Where's Ben Johnson coming from? The team where Aiden Hutchinson is outplaying Trayvon Walker by a mile. It's baffling to me how all of this shakes down. And to me, it's. I think that owners, for whatever reason, maybe going back to the conversation that we had earlier, where it takes time and it takes money for search firms, for general manager. But the fact of the matter is, the Jags have had 2 general managers since Shad Khan bought the team back in 2012. There was an aggressive, he bought the team, and then the next year they cleaned house of everything. And he got really aggressive, and he went out and he got Dave Caldwell. Caldwell was the general manager until 2021 when he promoted Baalke from within, because Baalke was the director of player personnel with Jacksonville in 2020, and then he promoted him to general manager. So since 2012, when Khan bought the team, he has only hired, essentially, 1 general manager. The other one he promoted from within. These owners just don't want to do it. And I get it. It's a lot of money that you would have to pay them anyways to not help out your team, but it's just, to me, there's way too much proof in the pudding here for this to have happened.
I look at their last 5 drafts. And I go, you got the number 1 pick in the Trevor Lawrence draft, so you're obligated to take him. Yep. And then the only other plush draft picks, Brian Thomas, Devin Lloyd, maybe Tyson Campbell.
Tyson Campbell's good.
He's good. He's had 1 big-time year and the rest. But otherwise, I mean, if I'm just looking even just at the draft record, that's always a big thing for me with the GMs. Is I go, you've basically, other than getting Brian Thomas this year and lucking into him being an animal, what have we done at all to help Trevor Lawrence since he carried you to the playoffs? I mean, people want to get on Lawrence, but this is why, if you ever traded Lawrence if Lawrence ever got traded to a team like the Rams after Stafford is done, or somewhere else with a more stable just leadership chain, boy, oh boy, we'd be getting a lot of the naysayers on Lawrence being real quiet. But I think because he's in this situation and going to continue to be in this situation, I don't know, man. I don't know with this Jags team. I don't. They're just not. They're not set up. It's another thing. They're bad in the trenches. The secondary, I don't know what they're trying to do there. Lawrence is hurt now all the time because they can't protect him. What is the direction? And for now, like you mentioned, at least half the direction is just going to keep going the same way they're going. What does that do? They're picking what, 5th?
I think they are 5th. Yeah, they're 5th.
What's it going to be? Are they hoping they get Travis Hunter? Is it
Mason Graham?
Mason Graham, maybe? Will Johnson? Is that going to do it? Is that going to be enough?
I don't know if Baalke's going to draft Mason Graham because his arms are short.
Is he going to be the one to take, like, Mykel Williams 5th overall? Do the same?
Oh, maybe.
Right?
Maybe.
We don't. This is the part we don't know. But I can tell you from the last 5 years of proof, it's probably going to be a pretty low probability outcome.
Yeah.
Because he hit the lottery ticket with Brian Thomas this year.
Hey, he did. Hey, got to respect it. Good pick.
Sure.
Good pick.
I can't sit here and say Brian
Traded
Thomas.
back and still got Brian Thomas Jr. We have no choice but to respect it.
I can respect that part, but man, the rest of it,
yeah, I'm with you.
They don't have a whole roster.
I'm with you. Last game they're talking about, 49ers and the Cardinals. Arizona won this game 47-24. Really put on an offensive show here. Arizona's top 5 graded players in the game. Wide receiver Greg Dortch with an 87.3. Safety Dadrian Taylor Demerson with an 85.5. Edge rusher Julian Okwara with an 81.0. Safety Budda Baker a 76.7. And then tight end Trey McBride to round things out at a 76.6. Quarterback Kyler Murray in this game, 84.5. On San Francisco side of things, fullback Kyle Juszczyk with an 86.6. Edge rusher Nick Bosa an 80.7. Wide receiver Juwan Jennings a 77.2. Wide receiver Chris Conley, with a 74.7. Then offensive tackle Colton McKivitz with a 74.3. Josh Jobs in this one, who played in place of Brock Purdy, a 51.5. My side that told the story here, McBride and Harrison went off. I thought that was great. Well, not went off, but they played well. And to me, it was a really great offensive day for the Cardinals because it was their ideal offensive day. The 2 top receivers for them, Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr., you'd love to see that. Kyler Murray in this game as well. 4 touchdowns, 3 big-time throws, no interceptions, no turnover-worthy plays. This is what you wanted to put forward going into the offseason. This is what you want to see a lot more of going into 2025. And so just to me, it was an ideal offensive day for them. Obviously, when you score 47 points, it's going to be the case. But their top 2 receivers in McBride and Harrison being the main benefactors of a really good Kyler Murray day was something that was fantastic for me to see. So,
that's what you hope for. And it was a game without James Conner, so they really put it on Kyler's shoulders.
Right, exactly.
And I think for me, one thing that had concerned me, our quarterback charters do a great job of going through the all-22 every game, putting these things together. So Kyler Murray in rhythm in this game, just kind of, get on your back foot, make your first or maybe your second read, get rid of the football. 19-24, 3 touchdowns, 3 big-time throws, 91 passing grade. That was the highest this season. I don't have any doubts about Kyler Murray being able to break the pocket and make plays and take off running. To me, there was the stagnant times of this offense this year or when he really was struggling from within the pocket, right, and within the rhythm of this offense, and especially the drop-back passing game the way it's supposed to be. 2.47 average time to throw in this game, 3rd lowest of the season. I need to see more of this from Kyler. And again, I think it took a long time for him to get the real chemistry going with Marvin Harrison Jr. I think it's a big thing they have to work on in this offseason. I wouldn't even hate – I know you love Michael Wilson. I know Greg Dortch, a good gadget player. I wouldn't even hate one more weapon being brought in here to be just that one more consistent outside threat. But, no, I think the goals for the Cardinals are obvious. Keep building around Murray. Right side of the offensive line, still need to work on this defense. They got to accumulate talent on defense. I think there's a clear road for them getting to the postseason. We got to remember they were 6-4. They were in first place at one point, right? And then it kind of fell apart on them down the stretch because they do have their flaws. They're not that far away. They just got to keep adding talent in the right spots, and they need Kyler, I think, in rhythm within the scope of the offense to play more like he played in this game.
Most disappointing for you. I'll do most disappointing, and then we'll end the show on a positive note.
In general, you just look at the 49ers and you go, that's not the 49ers. That's a shell of the 49ers with all the injuries. I mean, we didn't even have Brock Purdy in this game. So I think the 49ers have to look at their team and go, what does a healthy version of this team look like in 2025? Does that include Deebo Samuel? Is that, I don't know if there's any rumor about if Trent Williams going to play another year? We get him back for another year. There's that. What do we look like on the defensive line, especially? I know it's something we've looked at all year. I think Dre Greenlaw, I believe, is a free agent. Is that right? I'm pretty sure he is.
I think so.
And going into, he played a couple games off the injury. So I think they need to figure out honestly, it sounds funky, but just what a healthy starting 22 is supposed to look like next season. Because this year, I think you do have to just toss it for the sake of look at all the friggin' Pro Bowl roster of guys we had on IR this year. And it is what it is. Even the Niners, just in Kyle Shanahan, they just can't win with as many guys as went down.
Niners run defense was most disappointing for me in this game and really the season overall. 58.8 run defense grade as a team in this one. Jordan Elliott a 30.0 run defense grade. Malik Collins a 41.8. It's just an area where they really have to address moving forward, going into next season. And I think getting a lot more healthy goes into that. Having everybody out there for the full season will go into it. But how they played against the run was shocking how much of a liability that was for them the entire season. Most impressive for me, rookie safety, Dadrian Taylor-Demerson was fantastic in this game. 85.6. He was the highest graded defensive player for the Arizona Cardinals in this one. And sneaky, 75.5 overall grade for DTD this season on 259 snaps. I think he's going to be a stud for them moving forward. I know there's question marks about Budda Baker and whether or not he's going to be back. He's a free agent coming up, and I'm not saying that DTD is giving you the opportunity for him to move on, but I think there's going to be more playing time for Taylor-Demerson next season, and I think that he is a hell of a ball player, and I think he's going to have a really good 2025.
No, I agree with that. It's a guy with a lot of athletic potential, especially in their safeties this year. When you talk about Budda Baker, Taylor-Demerson, and Jalen Thompson, It's a fun group you're looking at, and I think Garrett Williams in the slot as well. Up front, they just need more talent on their defensive line, probably at linebacker too, and then maybe outside corner where they play a lot of zone and Gannon knows how to protect those guys. So I think they need just another offseason. I really think this was a relatively successful year for the Cardinals. They really got kind of out of the dumpster that they've been in, especially last year, and you can see at least the blueprint of what this team is supposed to look like, and we got some pieces moving forward. Most impressive for me is one of those big pieces. I don't know how many times. Out of 17 Cardinals games, I think I had Trey McBride most impressive, probably 8 or 9. But
he had a good year. Look, stacking them up.
A no doubt, unquestioned top 5 tight end. The three tight ends that stuck out this year, George Kittle, Trey McBride, Brock Bowers. That's the 3. I believe all of them were over 1,100 yards. 7 catches, 65 yards, like you mentioned in this game, 75.4 receiving rate. I think second in the league in receiving grade behind George Kittle among tight ends. One of the elite tight ends we have in the league. And just to see his development, and I think a lot of the offense and the passing game built around him, that's going to be a lot of fun to watch because they're only going to get deeper in the bag with that. And then once we add more perimeter threats along with Marvin Harrison, but Trey McBride, he's going to put up some stupid numbers the next couple of years. He's so good.
He is. He's a very talented player. There we go. 16 games looked at, reviewed, discussed, whatever you want to say. Appreciate everybody rocking with us for the entire regular season as we have covered everything week 1 all the way through this week 18. Obviously, the conversations continue, though. For the teams that aren't in the playoffs, we're going to talk about a lot about the NFL draft. Even starting this week, we're going to start to turn the page for you guys, start to churn out some draft content, who your team might be targeting, some team needs, all that good stuff. But then playoff teams. Playoff games are just next week as well, so you can expect to see the preview show as well in the middle of the week here, and then, of course, the review show with us a week from today, which for that one, no glossing over games there. All of them matter.
We got storylines, especially.
All of them matter down the stretch.
Rematches and divisional matchups. We got everything.
It's a lot of storylines. I'm excited to get to the preview that I'm going to do with Carmen later this week, and then, of course, excited to watch these games unfold next week. If you guys don't have a PFF Plus subscription, like I said, no matter where you are when it comes to the draft, maybe the playoffs, whatever, a PFF Plus subscription's got you. You can look at the premium stats for your team going into the playoff run, or you can really start to dig into the draft and free agency and all that good stuff. If you don't have one, go over to pff.com and make sure you get yourself one. Once again, thank you guys so much for rocking with us throughout the regular season. Excited to continue to bring content to you throughout the playoffs and draft season as well. For Dalton Wasserman, I'm Trevor Sikkema. Thanks, guys, so much. We'll see you guys next week.